Okay, welcome everybody. We're here. As you can see, we've
Okay.
been chatting already. Steven's disappointed, which is okay. Um,
Because disappointment is an
You're
integral part
lucky.
of
You're
life.
seven
that's right.
states away, man.
I'm only
I,
7 states away. Don't make me come out
I'm not
there.
disappointed with Steven. I just want to point out that I am disappointed with George Crashos from Australia,
Oh
and
yeah,
who is not here and thinks that something is more important than the realms. So I just
that's
want to
right.
point that
That's
out.
right.
Don't let him forget it. Make sure to
I
bring it
don't.
up in your comments on Facebook.
Please, whenever you see George, call him a bad, naughty boy for not coming in because he had to do something silly in the morning.
I'm sure that gnomes were involved.
They always are.
Whoa.
Gnomes are deceitful little critters. They should be banished. But anyway, welcome to our Waterdeep chat here. I'm Jeff Thetford. I'm the chief cook and bottle washer of the Mages and Sages podcast. Curry is unavailable today. He's actually at a soccer game, so which is apparently more important than the Forgotten Realms. I don't know why. Same thing with George. He's probably with one at George. He probably flew out to Australia to watch soccer with George. So we'll get both of them. We'll get both of them back. We got Ed Greenwood, the creator of the Forgotten Realms here. We have Eric Boyd, Stephen Shind, and Brian Cortillo, who are all contributors to over the last few decades to keep the realms alive, and we do appreciate all of them. And we are doing our deep dive into North Ward. And I'm just going to open the floor to anybody who wants to start. I know Ed has probably about 6 hours of lore he'd like to put out, which we are. Just don't worry. We are going to be getting a copy of that. We're going to post it so we all can all have that. So Ed's work isn't in vain. But whoever wants to start, discussions, questions from the group, questions from the people out in there in internet land, that'd be fantastic. And I'll just leave it to that.
So I have a question for Ed,
All right.
just to kick us off. Why would you buy property in North Ward and not Sea Ward?
Okay. The fast answer to that is North Ward is cleaner and less damp because it doesn't get the sea fogs. That's number one. Number two, Sea Ward has always been more expensive because there have been more old money nobles there. So there are lots of people who want to be near them to do business with them or to have the cachet of a good address. So it's sort of like in Monopoly terms, Boardwalk and Park Place, and then you go down a rank. Well, North Ward was always just behind Sea Ward in social ranking. And unlike, say, Castle Ward, which was for politics and movers and shakers and guilds and so on, Sea Ward was where old money nobles lived and old money wealthy Waterdavians. And North Ward was also where nobles and old money Waterdavians lived, but it was also where new money Waterdavians, nouveau riche, social climbers lived because it was easier to buy stuff and there was more rental accommodation, like upper floors above shops in North Ward. So you'd find more upper class people, artisans, crafters, and even shopkeepers living in North Ward. So that would be the why. I'm going to go into lots more, but I mean, it's just a shade behind. If you wanted to live in a nice house in Waterdeep and you wanted a quiet neighborhood that's well policed without the Hollywood buses of tourists gawking, you would choose North Ward over Sea Ward.
All right, well then I got a follow-up question, Ed. So I'm an adventurer and I
Yeah.
don't like boring. Why do I like North Ward?
Because all the people who are going to hire you as a patron and all the retired adventurers that you want to get even with and all the heads of all the cults and cabals and people that you want to get even with, they're all living in North Ward and their treasure is living with them. And people and people who do things like buy and sell monsters. I'll get to that later. There's actually a character who's known as Lady Monster. That's her nickname. Um, if you're interested in that, or you want to be one of those adventuring bands who brings back live monsters, dead monsters, or monster parts to sell, the sort of unglamorous bread and butter money that adventuring bands try and earn when they don't want to be bored out of their trees, which is bodyguard work and warehouse work and shop night guard work. I'm going to guard a door. It's sort of like Spider Robinson, the science fiction author, who came out of university with his fresh degrees and found himself guarding a manhole in New York City, so no one would steal it. Excuse me, a person access cover, but it was a manhole back then. And he found this to be a crashing disappointment and not the fulfillment of the American dream. Well, the same sort of thing would pertain if you want quietude and a veneer of respectability without all the old money guild gingerbread of Seaward. You might go to Northward, but there's a lot of stuff hidden in Northward, from gambling houses and exclusive clubs, because it's easier for them to buy up
Blown
the
taverns,
rooms.
if I remember correctly.
Yeah, exactly. And they can knock holes in walls of the upstairs rooms and put together a club a lot easier than the zoning regulations in Seaward. There you go.
The homeowners associations aren't nearly as powerful there.
Yeah, the covenants will allow you to have, little plastic pink dragons on your front lawn.
Okay, I got a question here. Actually, we'll take a question from the people that are watching. Walker TCH asks, how does an adventurer become a Waterdeep noble?
This again. There are innumerable Twitter. Okay, I have answered this on Twitter about 6
Marry
times.
into them.
But yeah, Stephen has put his finger on it. There are 2 answers to that. You don't. It's the first one.
Yeah.
And if you really want to become one, Stephen has just identified the way. You marry into them.
So going in and with a bucket
Yes.
of gold, buying up a huge house from a noble family that's died or left the town, you couldn't statuate yourself as a noble?
Nope, that doesn't give you
No.
the title. There was a brief period, which was outlined in Rosemary Jones' novel City of the Dead, where several of the noble families went on hard times, and there was a sort of fad for a little bit of selling off titles. And that was actually ruled illegal later on by special decree of the masked lords. And then they had to deal with the tricky problem of 2 legitimate sets of claimants to a noble status: the person who bought it and the noble, or the bloodline, the heritage family that had it before. And most of those have been resolved. But no,
I've been tripping over.
But you can't just buy into the. One thing you cannot do is walk in and say, "I'd like to become, a noble." But if you've got the spending money, you can arrive in Waterdeep and pretend to be a noble from some place far, far away that you invent. And as long as you're spending money like water and living like a prince, everyone will be happy to say, "Yes, my lord," and "How high, my lord," and "Would you like it buffed to an extra gloss this morning, my lord?" Because money talks in Waterdeep, but they're not really noble.
And no one asked. Go ahead.
That's right.
Sorry. Well, and
you froze
no
there,
one
Stephen.
I was going to ask where Gilder really is anyway.
I think your connection got a little wonky there, Stephen.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I was just saying nobody's going to exactly ask where Gilder really is in the realms. They don't care.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
You get money to spend, they'll
Or
be happy
Florin.
to take it.
Or Florin. That's right. That's right.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
They don't.
And
They
I
don't.
suspect that
Go ahead.
Stephen, you were saying I suspect that.
when Laurel took over as Open Lord, I suspect she did what she could to undo some of the excesses of Daggalt Neverember.
Oh
And
gosh, yes.
some of the, so one thing would be reestablishing some of the rules and strictures of what you can and can't do as a noble, how you can join the ranks, etc., etc., and
Oh,
what
yes.
exactly they can and can't get away with.
Yeah. And just as happens in certain real world countries, and I don't need to name them because there are a lot of them, where
Mhm.
whoever is in power changes, and all the
Uh,
appointees of the previous government get quietly suggested they resign, or not so quietly if they refuse, and replaced by the new cruise people. A lot of that, a lot of what Daggalt did was giving not noble titles but rank position titles. You know, like Lord Sweeper of the Sewers, when Lord Sweeper of the Sewers never went near a sewer in his life, but it was a nice cushy salary.
A lot of
And
patronage salary type deals, the no-show
yeah,
jobs.
yeah,
Yeah. Mhm.
and they were just quietly, you know, it was recommended that they retire.
So to stop being a noble in Waterdeep, what do you do apart from
Sure.
dying?
To stop being a noble?
Yeah.
It's never come up, Jeff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there are penniless ex nobles.
you go to
You go to where?
um,
What were you going to say, Stephen?
Oh, I'm just saying, I ran across a list of 3 or 4 different house names of some noble families that, 2 or 3 older noble families from, say, that 1994 box set have gone under, and they just consolidated them together as another thing. And so, like House Cothant and House Thorpe have kind of merged together to become House Cothant. Not my best bit, but it is what it is.
There is one
Right.
other.
It's no Benifer, but I like it.
There
Funny
is
you should mention that. The horse-faced lady heir is no.
there is one other thing that I want to bring up, in that it is at this point, given the political climate, significantly easier to become a masked lord than it is to become a lord in Waterdeep.
Yes.
In particular, because certain recent events have thinned the ranks um, of masked lords in Waterdeep.
True.
They're looking for people that are willing to do work behind the scenes. Now, it doesn't come with, public acclaim, but it's in some ways safer to be a masked lord than it is to be lord of a noble house in Waterdeep.
Mhm.
Because people don't know who you are if you're doing your job properly.
Right.
Yeah.
And especially if you're running a game where your players are getting to 11th 12th level, they've done some good things for the city, they may be looking into laying down roots in the city, or looking forward towards retirement. As a DM, that may
Mhm.
be something to consider, rather than dangling a noble title for one of the PCs that's unlikely to materialize. I also don't know, and Ed, I know we've had this conversation about Cormyr and some human kingdoms. What is the
Mhm.
take on non-human nobles in
Hmm.
Waterdeep, outside of the masked lords? Because I know
Right.
had non-human masked lords before, but noble houses.
I don't think so far in Waterdeep there are any completely non-human houses. I know there are half elves and so on.
Mhm.
Um, And as Stephen said earlier, the best way to become noble is to marry into the house, and that's what has happened. Um,
Mhm.
I think one of the things that is clear that over the years is Waterdeep is a cosmopolitan trading city that's become increasingly tolerant of,
Mhm.
the Drow was the sort of last holdout of, hmm, maybe not, sort of thing. Um, that people would sort of look twice in the streets. Everybody else is sort of like, okay, if it's a sentient race that is encountered while trading, and it's not a mind flayer reaching for your head with its tentacles, you know, or a roper or something,
Wow.
or a shambling mound. If it's not something like that coming down the street, everyone's accepted as traders, and because nobles have always had the money to indulge their eccentricities, whatever those eccentricities are. I mean, sometimes for some of them, it's collecting boots, something like that, just something absolutely crazy, that doesn't harm
Mhm.
anybody else necessarily. And as long as your eccentricity doesn't involve harming other people, like, you know,
Mhm.
collecting people to put brands on or something like that,
Right. Right.
Mhm.
in when you're drunk in a tavern, your eccentricity is just sort of excused because you're wealthy and you're indulging your wants. And because of that, there is this attitude that, oh, nobles can do anything. So if a noble, for instance, marries somebody who has feathers and wings, okay, that's now the new Lord so and so. Because remember, um, if you don't know somebody's noble rank, you're calling them Ser or whatever, And if you do think they're noble, you call them Lord and Lady, and you're
Hmm.
not saying, oh, what's your specific title? You just say my Lord, my Lady, sort of thing. So you
Mhm.
just accept that the new Lady so and so or the new Lord so and so has feathers. So therefore, there's complete tolerance for non-human nobles. There just aren't
Mhm.
a lot of them yet. In the same way
Right.
that in our real world, it may take a long time for non-white males to be substantially reinforced by visible other people as CEOs of large corporations. It just takes a long time for
Mhm.
that process. And same thing is happening with the nobles of Waterdeep.
Okay.
Now,
But
can I drop in a
there's no
point?
prohibition at all on race or anything in law whatsoever.
Hmm.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, that's good. That's good. So I know you
Actually,
guys have some stuff written
Yeah.
up.
oh yeah.
Right. You got a, okay. Okay. I just wanted to drop in one more thing that's linked to this nobles discussion.
Okay. Yeah.
If you're an
Please.
adventurer out of camp and you want something with, rather than we do that would still be interesting and get you some political, not necessarily political weight, but it would get you context. Put your money behind a fest hall.
Oh yeah.
Then you have tons and tons of people always coming to you with all sorts of rumors and all sorts of interesting things. And you have the cachet of, hey, you're a landowner, you're the owner of this popular place. There may be more adventurers to hook off of that, but if nothing else, it gives you something to do rather than, you know, roll around in the coins like Uncle Scrooge.
Well, we all
Wait,
know that the patrons of these places do talk in their sleep.
wait, quick follow up to that, Stephen. Should I have my brother Fredo run it?
No, no.
Keep it
He'll
in the
mess with the dancing
family.
girls.
No, that's really a good idea because everybody visits the fest halls, whether in the
Mhm.
light of day or in the subterfuge of night. They're going to go in there and they're going to drink and they're going to have wobbly tongues and it's a great place to find out if
Tongues.
tongues,
Those are
tongues,
extra, Jeff.
Mhm.
The wobbly
tongues.
tongues are always extra.
That's right.
Say hello to my
Oh,
little friend.
Friend. That's Lola. She costs more. But anyway, no, it's
good
it's a
night,
great.
everybody.
Good night. We're done. Now that's good, Stephen, because I haven't even thought about that. Actually, doing a investing of a player investing behind a fest hall, using it for information. It's a great idea. All right, who wants to go with what they've pulled from their minds for the last couple of days?
Well, Ed, do you want to go first or last?
Uh-oh.
I mean, I have all sorts of topics from architecture and the architecture of Trollskull
Mhm.
Manor because someone asked on Twitter and I answered.
Ah,
To more general things about Northward, like the eccentrics you'll find there, the treasure tales,
mhm,
an NPC of interest, and 9 NPCs that are rather hidden.
Well, do you want
So
to do some of it and then we'll alternate with some of the rest
Yeah,
of
why don't
us?
you do a
sure,
few
yeah.
and then we'll
okay,
hit the other guys.
okay. So let me just take the first page out of this. Here we go.
All right.
Northward has always been a prosperous, not noble old money, but wealthy and grasping after prominence district of the city. Though, like all generalizations, this fails when one looks closely, for it has its paupers, it has its clinging by fingertips to abode as shop assistants, population, and its share of long resident nobles with their mansions and their villas, too. Northward has always had this image of quiet respectability and is a quote, relatively safe, unquote, neighborhood. Few bother to inquire as to why. But the truth is that since shortly after Agaron's passing, it's been the home of no less than 9 dragons, who spend much of their time in human shape, and who long ago quietly modified the famous dragon wards of the city to not see them or act on them, thanks to enspelled tokens they formerly wore, but which they long ago embedded in their scales. Laeral warns me that these are not the only pass tokens that let draconic beings ignore or freely bypass the city wards, and some of the items with this function have surprising forms. So if you come across references to, quote, the Silent Nine, unquote, in Waterdavian writings of the 1360s, which was when others, notably apprentices in Blackstaff Tower, first noticed them, though these inquirers were soon encouraged by the Blackstaff to attend to their own business and fall silent on this particular matter, these dragons are who's being referred to. To this day, the Silent Nine, by the way, acting individually more than collectively, though they like each other and they work together whenever necessary, they keep watch on criminal activities, red wizards and dragon cultists, and spies of the Arcane Brotherhood and others who take up residence in Northward. And these are numerous, as it's a preferred area to live in if you're not an official envoy or ambassador, but do represent outland interests in the City of Splendors. I've named some of the Silent Nine in various places down the years, such as my Worms of the North series, but of more interest than their ages, the fact that their silver and gold dragons are the aliases they currently use. They change these from time to time to conceal their unusual for humans longevity, building fictitious heritages and very real careers for their human guises. These include Avali's Moonwind Winter of Sashtar Street, a quiet, bespectacled, raven haired woman who makes her living as a seller of maps and books. Haldren Methland of Horn Street, an amiable, solid looking, elderly man who's respected as a good restorer and reforger of swords, daggers, scabbards, and sheaths. Emthira Emberhair Burhern of Stallion Street, a copper to crimson haired woman easily recognized for her ankle length fall of straight hair, who works as a wood carver making household trim adornments such as curlicute or fanciful creature adorned lock plate surrounds, door frames, window frames, and door panels. And her specialty is carving a relief portrait of someone to go on their own front or bedchamber door. And Lastly, the Lion of Lion Street, Malros Maroon Lion of Lion Street, a weapons trainer and seller of used armor and shields, who was once a mercenary company captain and successful adventurer, or so he claims. He's an alert, long black haired, red skinned, eagle beak nosed man with odd yellow eyes and a swift smile. They prefer not to drop their human guises, so if you force one of them to, be prepared for unpleasantness. And be aware, too, that they are cunning, know the city very well, and have access to arsenals of magic weapons and items, including some rigged to be parts of rather effective traps that guard their city residences. Every one of them, by the way, owns secondary or even tertiary properties they can take refuge in. And every one of them also has at least one current alternate human persona they can assume if their main role seems to be attracting persistent attention. The Silent Nine are believed to have been responsible for the disappearances of several North Ward residents in the 1470s and 1480s DR. One of them, a professional assassin from Kalimshan, who came to the Deep to assassinate a guildmaster, succeeded, and stayed to see if sufficient coin could be had by covertly offering merchants, gilded and not, chances to conveniently eliminate rivals in return for fees. After two takers, the slayer vanished without trace, though, as one of the nine put it, that's not quite true. I spat out his boots.
Uh, hmm.
Like that a lot.
Excellent. Excellent. I
Yeah.
like that. Who wants to follow that one? Not me.
Not I, said the duck.
I'll give it a shot if you want.
Excellent.
All right. So I'll admit that this has a tenuous tie to the North Ward, but it is tied nonetheless. I was trying to remember what I remembered of North Ward, and I remembered detailing the catacombs beneath House Gost in the Vampires of Waterdeep trilogy in Dungeon 126 to 128. So a small part of this comes from Dungeon 128, but I've expanded on it greatly. Because I found there was a lot of stuff that had hit the cutting room floor, if you can believe it, because I had put in even more backstory that got cut.
No, really?
No.
I went back and I was like comparing paragraph from paragraph. I'm like, that wasn't that bad. I don't know why that got cut. I mean, it wasn't relevant to the plot or the adventure or anything, but it was interesting. So now you guys get to hear it. Okay.
Yay.
So remember that house Gost has its noble estate in North Ward, which is how I'm tenuously tying it to tonight's discussion. Since the founding of Nemours Hold in the year of the curse, also known as 882 Dale Reckoning, wealthy merchant families in what is now the city of Waterdeep have claimed the mantle of nobility. In some cases, such claims were based on the awarding of nobility to the familial line by another sovereign realm, such as Falorm, and in other cases, such claims reflected the aspirations of a powerful family with the means to demand such honorifics from their neighbors. In the year of the cockatrice, also known as 1248 Dale Reckoning, the lords of Waterdeep recognized a merchant gentry, marking the formal beginnings of the Waterdavian nobility. In some cases, they retroactively acknowledged a long-standing claim, allowing the family to date its ennoblement to an earlier date. And in some cases, the family was ennobled from that point forward. So we're going to talk about an example of the former. However, the lords carefully insisted there was no established order of precedence or seniority preventing the formal establishment of an old guard. But let's talk about that old guard. House Roldagost dates its ennoblement to the year of the Molten Men, 1151 Dale Reckoning, as some folks think it. Although in truth, the family's noble roots lie beneath the waters of the Mare of Dead Men in the fallen realm of Tower, which is my way of tying into the Eye of Merkel adventure in Dungeon 73. I don't know why I did that. Okay. Although the Roldagost family fortune was built on the backs of mercenaries and bounty hunters in their employ, Lord Bormer Roldagost moved aggressively into armor forging, banking, and caravan mastering after settling in Waterdeep. Lord Bormer also had twin sons, Bormor II and Ragnar, who feuded up until their father's death in the year of Sundered Shields, also known as 1197 Dale Reckoning. To mitigate the risk of fratricide, Lord Bormer split the family fortune between his two sons and directed that each be made head of his own merchant house. Lord Bormer II kept the name Roldagost, while Lord Ragnar's descendants became known as House Gost, and scions of both houses have avoided each other since. So we're only going to talk about House Gost tonight. Under the leadership of Lord Ragnar, House Gost expanded its share of the original Roldagost fortune through legitimate investments in caravan mastering and armor forging, but they continued to lag House Roldagost in prestige and wealth. As the years passed, Lord Ragnar slipped into his dotage, and the mantle of lordship passed to his eldest son, Lord Geldrith, in the year of prideful tales. Dun dun dun. That's also known as 1219 Dale Reckoning. Lord Geldrith sought to expand the family fortunes by getting into the trading business directly, beyond the traditional caravan mustering his father had specialized in. He hit upon the scheme of creating a series of portals through which trade goods could be cheaply shipped. However, this was no easy task, as the Waterdavian terminus of such a portal needed to be constructed beyond the Rid of Agarin above and Hallister below. So at great personal expense, at exactly the right level and depth below Waterdeep, the Gost Patriarch began construction of a secret subterranean complex, later dubbed the Fireplace Level, beneath the Gost family villa, using slaves brought in from Skullport and brought up via the sewers. He hired wizards from the recently founded School of Wonder in far-off Am to build a portal from that complex to the abandoned gnome city of Dalblund. That's sort of up the Desserin Vale from Waterdeep. In Dalblund, Lord Gost constructed a fortified subterranean way station. The portal from Dalblund to Waterdeep was a keyed two-way portal, while the portal from Dalblund to a cave mouth on the southernmost slopes of the Forlorn Hills was an unkeyed two-way portal. The Waterdeep terminus in Dalblund also acted as an unkeyed one-way portal to the Worm Writhings, which is tunnels created by purple worms under the Lurkwood. The portal network was designed to prevent anyone trailing a caravan into the portal network from reaching the family estate in Waterdeep. First, any such interloper would have to battle the defenders of the way station. And second, if they won passage past that group, then the pursuers were likely to stumble into the Worm Writhings as they lacked the proper token and be unable to return rather than reach the family estate. Once the complex and the portal network were completed in the year of the Winged Worm, known to some as 1225 Dale Reckoning, the slaves were killed off or sold to masters in far-off lands. Wares of House Gost were brought down via a secret stair beneath a since-vanished warehouse which stood where the grinning lion now stands. See, I'm back to Northward.
Finally, he brings it around.
And then carried out of the city via the portal network to the cave mouth high above Seacomber. In the years that followed, House Gost's fortunes grew significantly. However, very quickly, the way station faced intermittent attacks from worm-like undead that appeared out of the shadows. As a result, House Gost was forced to significantly increase its expenditures on defending the way station, making the shipment of goods far more expensive than planned. However, the House Gost was not deterred, and in the year of many monsters, also known as 1233 Dale Reckoning, Lord Harthar, Geldrith's second son and heir, hit upon a new means of increasing the family fortune. The family invested in several additional portals linking Dalblund to dangerous locales around the Savage North, because if your portal network isn't working, you should just make it bigger. Hunters in the employ of House Gost then began to use the portal network to capture rare monsters and bring them back to the way station for preparation. Once safely secured, they were moved on to the city for sale in the markets of Skullport. At the same time, Lord Harthar forged an arrangement with House Gundwind, by which Gundwind couriers would ferry Gost goods by hippogriff if the portal network could not be used to fulfill a contract in time. Despite these efforts, once again, House Gost's plan began to founder as the number of undead draconic attacks on Dalblund continued to accelerate, and eventually Lord Harthar Gost was forced to abandon the way station altogether. Hired mages created magical tokens to bypass the way station, making it possible, for example, to pass directly from the cave mouth on the southern slopes of the Forlorn Hills to the Gost family estate. And this bypassing of the way station proved propitious for the Dracolich known as Dargogothoth, the Creeping Doom, claimed Dalblund as
Say
his
that
lair.
again.
No, in the year of beckoning death.
I do believe it's Darargatha.
Thank you, Ed. Also known as 1253 Dale Reckoning, after years of exploratory forays. I'm almost there. In the year of the Dusty Throne, the death of Waterdeep's open lord Agaron marked the end of the Lord's rule and the rise of the Council of Guildmasters. Lord Geldorth II, son of Harthar and the patriarch of House Gost, took advantage of the resultant breakdown in law and order to invest some of the family fortune in the fledgling Shadow Thieves, allowing them to become a true thieves guild. In exchange for its investment, House Gost received a steady stream of treasures plundered from Waterdavian crypts and guilds by the Shadow Thieves, which House Gost then resold in distant cities after smuggling the goods out of Waterdeep via its portal network. After 6 years of self-interested squabbling among the guild masters, the guild wars flared anew in the year of the Black Wind, and no longer so dependent on the timely delivery of goods, and hence better able to tolerate disruptions in his family's portal network, Lord Geldorth II took advantage of the chaos to end his family's arrangement with House Gunwind and reclaim their lost earnings. Thieves in the employ of Lord Geldorth II broke into the Gunwind villa, kidnapped every blood relation of the Gunwind clan they could find, and plundered the family vaults. Those Gunwinds who survived the raid were imprisoned in one of the beast cages in the Goss complex and left to starve to death. Lord Geldorth II's betrayal of his business partners backfired when several of the Gunwinds arose as ghosts, intent on gaining their revenge. Despite several attempts to have the Gunwind ghosts destroyed, they kept returning, rising up from the depths to stalk the halls of House Gost, and unwilling to rest until the fortunes of Lord Harthar and his heirs had been similarly destroyed, and the scions of Geldorth II had paid with their lives in kind. Lord Geldorth II was forced to cash in his family's investment in the Shadow Thieves in exchange for the guild's assistance in containing the problem. Maroon, then Shadow Mage of the Thieves Guild, constructed a ghost-proof box of force around the complex, using permanent wall of force spells with automatically resetting antipathy traps, repelling ghosts over the exits. In the decades that followed, the heirs of House Gost used their family fortune, augmented by the wealth seized from House Gunwind, to build a new trading business based on conventional overland routes. And although members of the House Gost continued to use the portal complex to access other parts in the realms, they did so less and less over the years, as doing so required them to take strong defensive measures against the hostile ghosts that dwelled within. And during the same period, a distant heir of House Gunwind also claimed his family's title and rebuilt that house as well on the back of the family's slave trade. And despite the passage of decades, there is still a lingering distrust between the two houses, stemming from long-held suspicions of the Goss clan's hand in nearly destroying the Gunwind family and its fortune. And now we come to our conclusion. In the year of the Catacombs, also known as 1308 Dale Reckoning, a purple worm in the worm writhing swallowed whole a Gost-hired monster hunter, including his portal token, and then stumbled through the portal, bypassing the way station, into the Gost family estate catacombs. Fortunately, Lord Geldorth II had paid long ago to place a time stasis trap on the portal terminus that was triggered by the arrival of an unbound magical beast, but such was the worm's bulk that its arrival shattered much of the surrounding stonework. By chance, this opened a narrow fissure to the flue of the fireplace exit above the dungeon of the crypt. Unwilling to pay for the purple worm to be removed, House Gost finally abandoned the subterranean complex, sealed off all access to it from their villa, and expunged nearly all record from it from their records. And none would ever find it again except for the company of crazed venturers. There you go. All about a portal in North Ward.
You know, it's amazing how far you can go without George here to interrupt.
Oh dear.
Wow.
Hey, be nice to George. He suffers.
He does. He does.
Slings and arrows.
A small bit of that was in Dungeon 128, but that was the longer version that they decided to trim down.
Oh, incredible.
How dare they?
I know.
You see, if you trim down the back history, you're trimming down the motivations, which tells a dungeon master how all of these nobles will react if you bring on the entire family.
There you go.
Right.
It also shows you why you shouldn't bypass the defenses on your portal network. You end up with a purple worm in the
Purple worm stuck in the... So is a purple worm still there?
No, I think Ed can tell you what happened to the purple worm.
Yes, the company of crazed ventures happened to the purple worm.
What did they do?
Well, it ended up as a lawn ornament in front of their villa, transmuted into metal by
Silver, I think you said.
silver. Yes, by a particular magic item that they happened to be. You see, they had this magic item that would turn something into silver. And so they immediately looked at the purple worm.
That's a big lawn ornament, though.
Well, it's sort of like give them an inch and they'll take a mile.
Yeah.
That's
And that's
capitalist
why-
for you.
That's
And
right.
that's why
See,
when they
but
said they
that's-
wanted to be in the Inn of the Dripping Dagger, they were in
Yeah.
the Inn of the Dripping Dagger.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. The blast puppies. Hmm.
Yep.
I think I've said this before, but this reminds me of an adventure I played, a campaign I played in, not in the realms, for another DM a long time ago. He had carefully constructed an entire water world with scattered islands across it. There was almost no metal. There was just wood and leather and the
Oh
like.
God, that's right.
And he had us sail across the seas, past many islands to this distant island amidst the midst. There's a great dungeon he had described there, and he described it as we're coming close, and the great brass doors that sealed the dungeon. And we're like, wait, what? So we stole the doors, we took them back, we sold them, and we became rich and ruled the city.
I love it.
And never went in the dungeon.
Wow.
I
Anyhow,
love it.
sorry. Back to the realms.
Sometimes the side
Okay,
stories
then.
are much more interesting, I have to tell you. Okay, who wants to go next?
You want to do some more, Ed?
I can always do more, but
I-
I want other
Let's-
people to have a chance.
Let's go to some
Yeah.
of the questions that have been asked
Yeah.
in chat.
Yeah, let's ask a question then.
Okay, so let's see. Three Dragon Minimum asked well, two questions. Has the spread of Thayan enclaves continued, and how are the Alcata wingless wonders these days?
Okay.
Someone want to deal with the Alcata first?
Not
Uh,
I.
Ed's doing that. Sorry.
Ed's doing Ed. That's has Ed written all over it.
Those were your monster. I forget what issue of Dragon it was, but it was a long time ago.
in the 40s. Maybe issue 40 or 41.
In the
maybe issue 40.
1940s, he says.
Uh-huh.
Whoa. Boom, boom.
Okay, the thing about the Wingless Wonders is so many of them are, of course, transformed wizards. As in, wizards who lost duels, and this was one of the shapes you could put your rival into, where you wouldn't trigger any curses or family feuds or contingencies they had placed on their life. So even if they were going to come back to life by some means that they'd worked out beforehand, you would have the bad cess following you. You could avoid that by just transforming them into a wingless wonder, which would leave them helpless to change back. And you would then, of course, make sure the wingless wonder vanished to some obscure wilderness locale somewhere in the realms, so others couldn't find it and rescue it, and you had taken care of your rival. So a lot of the wingless wonders, and by the way, that was one of the first things that got trimmed by the dragon editors back in the day. So it just ended up as a silly monster.
The walking egg.
Yeah, as opposed to the fact that it was a silly beast, but sort of like in the real world, people look gawking at a platypus, for the first time and saying, "What?" You know, the creator was doing what? Um, I had put in a reason for there were being far more wingless wonders than there would otherwise have been, because people were forcing various wizards into this form. So a lot of them are still wandering the realms in this form. So they're doing quite well, but they're not forming collectives or herds or villages. They're wandering loners, foraging. So I just warn you, if you run into one somewhere in the realms, it might be a very powerful wizard. So you might not want to mistreat it, which is a lesson that's been in the realms from the very beginning, as the company of crazed venturers learned when they started mistreating shoeshine boys.
Right. Oh God, yeah, that's right.
Anyway, ta-da!
Don't kick a shoeshine boy. He may be higher level than you.
Yes.
I think we lost Brian here, apparently.
Yeah. Okay. Now, what was the other question that I was?
He talked about the
Say.
Thay.
Yes.
That's right. That's right. There's
Okay.
Brian.
Apologies, all.
Eric, you don't have any noise.
Eric, you are silenced.
Other than abducting Brian, what were the Thayan enclaves doing?
Wait. Before we get to the Thayan enclaves, I had a question for Ed about the Wingless Wonders.
Sure.
Did Volo spend any time as a Wingless Wonder?
No, that wasn't one of his. He spent time as all sorts of other things, from frogs to garden statues, gnomes, not gnomes. Uh,
I
no,
knew it.
no, he's been all sorts of other things, but not a wingless wonder.
It sounds like the kind of thing that would bypass the various protections on him.
Yes, yeah, it would. We should suggest it to the next person who has enough magical power and it gets sufficiently pissed off with Volo. That might be a future career path for everybody's favorite Volo Thamkadarm for a certain amount of time. But no, as far as I know, Volo has never been a wingless wonder. However, there are certain wingless wonders who are people who, should you free them, they would probably reward you handsomely before taking off across the realms to try and get their revenge on somebody who's usually several thousand years dead.
And Stephen in chat asked how many Wingless Wonders have once been named Manshun. My over under is 3.
Yes.
And Duwaju wants to know: did Elminster spend any time as a Wingless Wonder?
No, Elminster did not. You're over under. Okay, I will see that and say a player to be named later.
Because I can imagine Manshun making another
Excellent.
Manshun a Wingless Wonder.
Yes. I can see Manshun taking care of some Zent magelings that he doesn't want to eliminate, but he wants to keep around on ice for later, for when he needs more. Just turning some of them and setting them loose, because he would know where he put them in a. He'd do the same thing that dragons do, that want a pet herd of food. You find a remote alpine valley somewhere and rear your own herd in it. Well, the Manchun would do the same thing. He'd look in the high mountains, for instance, the mountains east and south of Roran, Durpar, Murgom in there, and you install your wingless wonders there. Only you are going to know where they are, and only you are going to be able to reach them. So if they don't meet death by misadventure, they're there for you to retrieve at a later date. So it is one way of keeping someone inconvenient on ice. So if you have a wizardly rival and you're tired of their constant attempts to kill you, but you need them alive because later on, when you're ready, you want to pump them for where the Rod of Seven Parts is or whatever, what they know of it, turn them into a wingless wonder and you dump them somewhere. Anyway.
Wow.
So that's always been a cute little side alley that has been, because it got edited out in the initial thing, sort of cut off from public use and knowledge. But the Home Realms campaign, the players there will go, oh no, not another wingless wonder. I wonder who this is. Who wants to try transforming them? And everybody else says, do we have enough spells? What are our hit points? Take cover.
What was the other part of that question, Brian?
Oh, the other part had to do with Thayan enclaves, and I have my own take, but I want everybody else to go first. Anyone who wants to answer about it.
I will merely say that Alex Kammer, Alan Patrick, and I are working on a DM's Guild Thay book. And it will shed some light on enclaves, although it's far more concerned with the realm itself, the realm of Thay right now, so that you will finally be able to run adventures there without making everything up. off the top of your head.
Eric,
I can't wait
Steven?
for that.
Yeah, I'm gonna wait for that. I don't have anything to add.
God forbid we have more lore, huh?
And
Uh,
Joe Rosso is helming a Rashomon guide, and I've contributed few little bits and pieces to that, but it's mainly like a dozen freelance designers all doing their own thing, more than a dozen now. So you'll get those two side by side, and I'm also working on a Volo's guide to a certain city with Jeff Gander and Fiona Patton and Clinton Kronk, who did an adventure set in that city. So that should tell you where it is. For those of you.
What I've been trying to do with the Thayans is actually to uncover their history in the North. And it's amazing how many little tidbits Volo left scattered around of past Thayan activity. And if you step back and you don't think of it as uncoordinated sort of random forays by the Red Wizards into the North, but you look for the common themes and the overarching plot, it would make you quite nervous, is all I would say.
And so it should.
Rather than laugh, I agree. You know, why are the Thayans so interested in the North and seem to have mostly skipped over the Heartlands entirely?
Well, part of that was the Covenant's fault. The Covenant essentially went and poked the bear. Well, first of all, the Thayans stole an ore cord. Then the Covenant said, well, who has the nerve to steal an ore cord? And they went out and poked the bear. And then the Thayans said, wait a minute, a whole other group of wizards as powerful as us. And then you started a centuries-long wizard war. So that was part of it. But there's a whole nother aspect to it too. I'm not probably the expert to reveal all this, but if you look at some of the older books that's in there, there is a lot of interest around the things that can be found in the Neverwinter Woods. The Neverwinter source book has a great deal of stories there with some interesting tie-ins to some of Ed's old Worms of the North articles. So that's another good place to look for Thayans in the Neverwinter Woods. So I'll leave it at that.
And just to add my own little bit on enclaves, in the post, I'm not barking, I promise.
That's me. Don't worry.
Since Zastam has fully taken over the country and has stopped pretending to be what he's not, for the most part, the kind of politeness that the Thayan enclaves represented has fallen away from my perspective, in particular because there were some rulers shortly after the late 1370s DR who did not like the way the enclaves popped up. In particular, I'm thinking of Alistair, who the enclave in Marsember, which only came about because the Lord of Marsember died, and the Herald of Marsember let it in as he was becoming Lord. And when Alistair found out about it, spent almost a decade trying to figure out how to kill this man for letting the Thayans into her country, and get away with it. Because all the paperwork was in order. He was a herald. He made sure the paperwork was in order. But she was not happy with the decision. The enclaves were, for me, the enclaves represented a way to represent the third edition availability of magic in various cities and other major settlements, so that players could get their magic items or learn how to make magic items without there being too much of a story impediment the way that there would have been in second edition. That's really what the Thayan enclaves were. And in fifth edition, now that we've moved away from the ease of magic item creation again, in the post spell plague era, I don't think the enclaves really represent aren't in line with what Wizards envisions as the level of availability of magic in the world for PCs, and so an abundance of Thayan enclaves really doesn't square with what the level of magic, and so I wouldn't be careless about introducing Thayan enclaves. I think you need a good, solid political reason, and not just we're going to have an insidious element from a mysterious Eastern country, because that has its own flavor of problematic stuff attached to it. I think you need a real good story
True.
reason to have them there.
No, very true. Very true. Steven?
Yes.
Anything?
I already chimed in earlier saying I have nothing to add to Thayan enclaves. Honestly, I haven't put a brain cell to use about them in over a decade. So
Well, I'm
sorry.
not surprised since you killed Blackstaff. So anyway.
Hey, it was a hit job I was paid to do.
Wow. So it was a hit job.
Sorry, that wound still bleeds, just so you know.
Oh dear. It hurts
Excuse me, I
being
need
on
to go
this
cry.
podcast.
I can go to the next question from the audience if you
Please.
like. Walker TCH says he doesn't know. Well, he or she, I'm not sure. Pronouns, I apologize. They're not sure how if we're familiar with it at all, but how would we work the Critical Role Bloodhunter class into the realms with its kind of gothic feel? I am not familiar enough to answer the question.
Same
Me
here.
neither. Yeah, and that's an Eric or Ed one.
Same here. I read through them once, and that's something we have to think about. Because I read through it before some other official stuff was released, as in Ravenloft type stuff.
Right.
So I would want to have another read through again, because I've always been far more interested in, why don't you just have planar travel and have that setting reachable by your players,
Right.
and then bring individual characters through if you want them to come through. If you want to cross pollinate the settings, have it be actual using gates, planar travel. Because the way I play D&D, I really it's not so much about metagaming and what's in the rules as it is characters in the setting. So I would always be more interested in, why don't you just bring a blood hunter in, or have your characters meet one, as opposed to, but I understand if somebody wants to start playing that character and roll up the character and create it. Yeah, that's something I'd have to research the character a lot more to give any advice at all.
Yeah, it'd have to be a good reason though to want to bring them into the realms though. Why were they there suddenly?
Well,
Spelljammers.
Spelljammers, there you go. That's what I mean. My whole point is we need to go back to opening the gates.
Spelljammer confirmed. I know my cues.
No.
That's right. No. That's funny. We got another one there.
See, I know.
Yeah.
You're freezing up there, Steven. Up there in God's country.
Nothing, but sorry, got a weird feedback there. Just spacing it up the name, I'd say oh, weird connection.
No, that's okay. Yeah, your connection was dying out there. That's okay.
Yeah. So if I was just tossed the title Bloodhunter, I'd be coming up with an offshoot of the Harpers that was solely lycanthropic in nature. But
Oh, nice.
That's probably far and away from what it actually is. But like I said, I'm just working off the text that came in the chat here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next
Ed,
question.
this is for you.
Uh-oh. Yes.
Do was betting that the Silent Nine are all Fang dragons. and wants to know if one of these dragon women is the fabled Ed's favorite dragon character in the realms.
Okay, first of all, they're not all women. They're everything. They're mainly silver and gold dragons. These particular 9, they're not the only dragons resident in Waterdeep by a long shot, but the Silent 9 are all silver or gold dragons. They just happen to, and they're not an adventuring group, a cabal. They are friends, but they're friends as in they all live in Northward and have lived there for quite a while, and they've gotten to know each other, and they've decided they'd rather work together as friends and not at cross purposes. But they all live and work independently. They're they're fascinated by living in human dominated cities like halflings, goblins, gnomes. Sorry, Eric, gnomes.
Not
Elves,
funny.
dwarves.
Not
Yeah,
funny.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, they're fascinated by the Congress of sentience, the trade and everything that goes on. So that's why they hang out together. But they are not these particular ones. The Silent 9 are not Fang dragons, and no, none of them is my favorite dragon character in the realms. Um, my If I have a favorite dragon character, it's far more likely to be one of the spectral dragons, like the one that is in Candlekeep, but there are others who have managed to live beyond their normal lifespans, but it has cost them and it has changed their essential nature. Because those are really fascinating because they're far more fun to role play because you don't have players sitting at the other side of the table going, okay, so he's an ancient, huge, gargantuan red dragon, so his breath weapon will do this, and he'll do, you don't have
Right.
that. Instead, you have the back to role playing. This is someone I don't know, a stranger, and I have to deal with them. They seem pretty powerful. I better be pretty polite. You know,
That wasn't thunder you heard last night. That was them drumming their nails in impatience.
yes. Yeah. Anyway,
Okay. Walker TCH is having a hard time trying to wrap their head around Manchun as a character and understanding his motivations. And that is a stream into itself.
It is. Wow.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
oh yeah.
There's lots of things to talk. I think we ought to schedule a Manchun stream.
I think we should.
And
My
everybody,
father's house, there are many Manchus.
hmm
Uh-huh.
That's true.
And everybody has to come up with their own Manchun clone to talk about.
Oh, there's what,
I
28?
came up with 17. I've
So you
done
better
my
get
work.
started.
You better start. Eric's already got backstory on 5 of them.
This does remind me of a question that I had for Ed, though. Right?
Yeah.
Since we entered third edition, with the concept that there was no, although there was one Manchun running around calling himself Manchun, there was no the one true Manchun anymore, right? And we entered fourth edition with that same prospect, and we entered fifth edition with that same prospect, supposedly. How is it that the Manchun in Spellstorm is the only one with the shard of Silverfire?
Ah, okay. So here we go. The clones of Manchun have the powers like level, abilities, knowledge that they had when they were created. So they're sort of like they're not all carbon copies of each other. They branch off from when they were created. And the thing about all the people who hold the silver fire is they can gain and lose it. All that can't happen is that Mistra can't take it. She can give it, she can't take it. Other things and other ways can take it, including Azuth and many of the senior servitors of Mistra, the quasi-divine beings that at various times have served her. And they can't take it to themselves. They can just rip it out of a being so it dissipates into the weave. Okay, so that nobody can like grab it. And that's the thing that people don't get. Oh, I will kill the person and I will take the silver fire. No, it never happens. It leaks. It leaks back out and it eventually finds its way back into the weave. Sort of like
No,
what
my question, Ed, is that, you know, we've got the clone of Manchun in Undermountain, right? And we've got the clone of Manchun that was in Westgate, which is the one that we're talking about in Spellstorm. Why is it? What
is it?
is it?
Is it?
Is it?
Because the one in Westgate was the vampire one, and
Yes.
and we have a if you read Secrets of Darkhold, the DM's Guild product, it runs through some of the Manchun clones. So
Well,
there are more.
What?
Oh, I know full well that there are more.
Yeah.
No, my question is that did the Silver Fire propagate to various other clones that were created after Manchun obtained the Silver Fire, or was it only in the one?
Only in the one.
So Manchun Prime lost the Silver Fire when he created that clone?
No, Manchun Prime did not have the Silver Fire. Remember there's a thing in the Sage of Shadowdale trilogy where Mistra offers Manchun, you know, do you want to be a chosen? Spoiler time, folks. That does not go well. But that has nothing to do with Manchun being an unwitting carrier of the Silver Fire for quite some time, just as Volo is. That's one of the reasons Volo has stayed alive despite his epicene behavior. He has guardian angels that he doesn't know about are going, yeah, we might not want to lose the Silver Fire. So let him save his ass again, god damn it.
Who's on bolo duty this week?
Yes, exactly. Because I had to come up with lore reasons for why certain quasi-plausible lore reasons why certain characters that staff designers did not want to shuffle off this mortal coil because they were too useful for various reasons, like a mouthpiece for a product, why they were still around, particularly after the way they behaved in canon. So there were reasons for this, and yeah, only one Manchun has the Silver Fire, and we happen to see which one it is in that particular book. Silverfire doesn't, like, if you clone the Manchun, if you walk up to the Manchun that has the Silverfire and you say, hey, are you going to clone yourself? And he says, yeah, go away. I don't want you to see me doing it. And then he clones himself and he hides all the clones. They don't all have some of his Silverfire. Because he can't do that with a clone spell. Silverfire is like the stuff of raw magic. It sort of burns through any spell you want to use to encompass it. It's the old thing of how do you handle something that can fall through your cup or burn a hole in your cup? And we've deliberately kept that fuzzy for DM story reasons, or back when there was a TSR fiction line, story reasons in the hands of a short story or novel writer. And what we're trying to do is have things stay mysterious, because magic should stay as mysterious and awesome in the proper use of the word, not the that's awesome. Oh boy, look at that bowel movement. That's awesome. Not that use of the word, but the proper use of the word awesome. You want the air of wonder and mystery to cling to magic. So you want some stuff to be mysterious just because you want it to be mysterious. And you want other stuff to be mysterious because you're going to need that plot wiggle room in the future for some other product. Elbow room, the old realms rule.
Right,
For every
right.
loose end you tie off. And
Mhm.
so that's one of the reasons why we kept it as mysterious as possible. Because if you specify, then suddenly a gamer says, "Oh, I want to use that. So I want my character to have Silverfire, and I want them to have Spellfire, and I want them to have Psionics, and I want them to be a magic user and a cleric. So in this round, my character's going to do this." And I know this happened because it happened in a charity game at a long
Right.
ago Gen Con with a young kid who said, "Okay, my magic user slash cleric, he casts this wizard spell this round, and he casts this cleric spell this round, and then he uses his psionics to do this and modify both spells, and he uses his silver fire." It was like, no.
No. Thank you for
So
breaking the character.
rather than having arguments with people at the table who might get angry because they think, well, there's nothing in the rules that stops that, forbids that. So you're actually, I'm taking this personally because you're stopping me doing something I want to do in the game. So just to avoid that thing ever coming up, because hey, every dungeon master is the soul of sweetness and light and does not want to treat his fellow human beings that way. You just avoid the whole thing.
So I got a question. I'm going to put two together. Actually, a statement.
See
Stephen
that,
just
Jeff?
made.
I'm sweetness and light.
You are sweetness and light. Well, that's why I put the dead gnome behind
I
me.
saw
so.
that.
I know.
I was looking.
So I'm gonna combine a statement Stephen just said with Walker's comment that he made here about the Manchun that Hallister took the hand from in Undermountain, and Stephen said the hand of glory is passe. How about the hand of Manchun? So there's a supplement you need to write right there. The hand of Manchun.
And there's 3 of them.
And there's
Shouldn't it
3
be-
of them. That's right.
Shouldn't it be the many hands of Manchun?
The mini. No, it's even
Oh.
better.
2 lefts and 1 right.
That's right.
Yeah,
two
I
two
mean,
lefts
if he-
make a right.
If he
I mean-
shrinks them, it could be the many hands of Manchun.
Oh. And,
So Manchun could have a mini me.
oh, mini
5,000
onions.
fingers of Manchu.
Mini onions.
That's right. Manchun counts
and
to 15.
I think that the folks from Wizards should be listening to this because, they can only sell one hand and eye of Vecna
That's true.
as a
That's
collector's
true.
item.
That's true. Well,
I
it
like
has
Manchu,
no
the hands
limit.
of fate, you know.
No, it has no
That would
limit, Stephen. Stephen, start on a kid's book. Manchun counts to 15.
Yeah.
That would be Kid Chun.
It's kid's turn. That's right.
There are so many Manchuns. They don't sell buffalo wings in the realms. They sell Manchun fingers. Manchun fingers.
fingers.
That's right. No lady
Oh,
fingers.
dear. What rating do you have on this podcast? I'm just
We have an adult rating on this podcast.
okay. Right. So we're
And yet
eating
we're all
fingers.
too immature for it.
That's right.
Speak for me, Steven. Speak for me.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, well,
go ahead.
can I make a suggestion here?
Yeah.
Can I drag this back to Northward?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Tell us about the halflings of Northward.
This
Stephen.
never happens. This never happens. We never go off topic.
Tell us
Oh,
about
no.
the halflings of Northward.
No, never.
Halflings aren't allowed in Northward.
What?
That's not
no,
true.
No, one of the things that I'd started, way back in the dawn of time. I can't even remember when I started working on that City of Splendors box, so it must have been 93
Yeah.
since it came out in 94. But so I started doing some work with just beefing up the demi-humans' presence in the city, mainly because, no offense to Ed, but there were too many humans in the NPC lists, and I wanted to diversify it a bit. So I threw in a number of different halfling NPCs, including one halfling Lord of Waterdeep, whom Eric promptly killed.
Hey, wasn't my fault. Manchun did it.
Yeah,
Manchun
yeah,
did it.
yeah.
Aha!
No,
Now we see why
this,
you want Manchun.
see, this is what happens now.
There is only one demi-human killer on this podcast, and I'm looking at him.
That's right.
Oh
That's right.
dear.
That's right.
Anyway, going back to Northward, one of the plot threads I'd started was with the dying out noble house of Merinos, and that noble lord who chose not to get remarried and have more children after his wife and kids died in. I honestly can't remember the accident now, but this is probably circa 1350 something. Anyway, he donated his money and lands to a number of the temples, but also designated that his family, the villa and compound area for the Marinos clan, would become a demi-human temple area. It's open to kind of like the plinth, but specifically for non-humans. So over time, that's become known as Holy Hands House. And it's actually expanded slightly with some of the changes with the spell plague and other things. They have managed to buy some of the other surrounding properties. So it's a fairly large presence in at least that little corner of Northward. And if you give me a second, I can remember exactly what street we're talking it's on once I find the right map. But yes, it looks like it's on Copper Street and just off the high road, just west of the high road. Anyway, so the Holy Hands House has had its troubles over the last century and change because Northward may be one of the more peaceful wards of Waterdeep, but that doesn't preclude there from being underhanded dealings and attempted assassinations and just general prejudice, whether it's humans against demi-humans, whether it's, elves against dwarves and dwarves against halflings or whatever. In any case, Holy Hands House has managed to build a community within itself and within the general vicinity of Waterdeep that this is a good, fair, and even-handed place to go. If there's not a specific temple to whatever elvish, dwarvish, halfling, gnomish, etc., any of those gods, if you don't have a specific chapel or temple to go to, you come to Holy Hands House. Probably 40 years back, the House Kothant, which was directly across the street from the Holy Hands House and had always loathed their presence there because I mentioned the human bigots. These were definitely among them. Needless to say, after several attempts to uproot and remove the demi-human presence, one thing that the priests at Holy Hands House discovered was that the major domo of House Kothant was actually a doppelganger. And this leads into a plot I started and Eric picked up and ran with of the Unseen, which were the greater doppelgangers in Waterdeep. Now, I'm not going to crunch any plot lines if people want to play with it. So I'm not going to say, oh, they managed to kill off and do this. They did manage to do the reverse of what they'd hoped to do. They uprooted the doppelgangers and House Kothant and removed them from that specific neighborhood. And in the 72 years since then, we're not entirely certain exactly what magic's at play, but no doppelgangers have ever managed to come within 100 yards of Holy Hands House or its immediate vicinity without being exposed and removed, whether exposed and they flee or exposed and they are killed. So if you want to make sure, anyone who's looking for a place to be safe from doppelgangers and that ilk, this is a place to come. That is an open secret and rumor across the city. So in any case, they got rid of House Cothon. What was left of that has merged with House Thorpe since the spell plague. So the monks of Holy Hand's house bought out the Cothont compound and have turned that into a very well-regarded fest hall called the Faithful's Rest. So that is, what is used to N16, I believe. No, N15 is now, it's a very well-established demi-human fest hall. All races are welcome, but the bulk of the staff and the people running the place are all halflings, half elves, dwarves, and the like. There's actually even their head bouncer is a centaur, who is not
Really?
related to the one from the D&D comic. There
Oh,
are
come
more
on.
as much as I
No,
love
let's not
Timothy's
go
bright,
there.
yeah,
That's
we're
like you all look alike, and you're all related to so and so.
yep. So the like I said, the noble villas, on the maps they may look like a single building. A lot of times they are a walled compound with multiple buildings. You're always going to have a place for the servants to stay. You're going to have stables. You're going to have possibly your own smithy or your own well house, that sort of thing. Both of these places pretty much follow that. So there are additional places for people to stay. Um, they don't charge anybody to stay if they want to sleep in the stables or whatever above in the hay and so forth. But one of the other changes that the neighbors really hated but couldn't do anything about because the lords okayed it, and this is now 67 years ago, some of the dwarves and halflings have established the Penitent's Forge, which is a very not it's not the best blacksmith and armor smith in town, but it is the only one that will not charge you extra for specifically sizing for dwarves, for halflings, for gnomes, that sort of. They specialize in demi-human sized weaponry and armor, and they're always looking for more, things to buy and trade and so forth. And that's been my main tinkering. But yes, the fact that there are some pockets of demi-humans, almost to the exception of humans, in at least a few tiny areas of Northward. But that doesn't mean that they're going to treat humans like humans have treated them.
Right.
It just depends on which bouncer you get, because some are more forgiving than others. So,
No,
okay.
excellent.
That
Excellent.
was
Thank you.
fabulous.
Yeah,
I actually
thank
think that brings up a good point, Stephen. So I think there's
Which is-
lots of ways to play Waterdeep.
Mhm.
One way to play, and I think it's in some ways looking for what you want to see. I think it's
Yep.
quite reasonable to think of Waterdeep as a primarily human city. And if you wander
Mhm.
around the City of Splendors, you will see lots and lots of humans, and you might overlook the halflings and the gnomes and the dwarves and the elves. But if what you prefer is a more cosmopolitan is the wrong word, but racially diverse city,
Mhm.
lots of different species. I think if your adventurers go into town, they will certainly find that wherever they turn around, that there are far more than humans in the city. So it really depends on your group style and the DM style. I think you can kind of take it either way or somewhere in between.
Oh yeah.
And from the very beginning in the realms, I built in the fact that halflings that want to live in cities they just blend in a human city. They
Mm-hmm.
become the shopkeepers, the craft workers, the scurrying servants, and
Mm-hmm.
they they keep a low public profile because that's what again, this is a generalization, and like all generalizations falls down in specifics, but that's how they
Mm-hmm.
choose to live if they want to live in a city. uh, you see,
Mm-hmm.
most halflings want to live in bucolic nature. They want to be farming, and they want green growing things. But if those that choose to live in a city, well, the dominant culture in the Sword Coast, which is what we first saw of the realms and saw most of the realms, were human dominated cities, and they're they live in the human cities, and
Mm-hmm.
they just don't want to be noticed except on an individual level of you trading with them. The baker you buy
Mm-hmm.
your buns from in the morning, you know, is a halfling. They don't go, "Hi, I'm a halfling." It just is. And
That's true.
I had that in the game from the beginning, because otherwise, how are all these people you see in the monster manual? Where do they live in the realms, and what do they do? And until the chance to write ecologies came along, which was an editorial assignment, the ecology of articles, by the way, didn't originate with TSR at all. They originated with a magazine that went defunct called Dragon Lords.
Hmm.
And when it went defunct, the guy who'd run the magazine turned around and offered to Kim Mohan, offered to Jake and Kim, the 6 or so articles that they'd done. And he thought this was a great idea to pick up and run with, because it would give us more detail on all of the monsters that we focused on. So that was
Mm-hmm.
one of my first editorial assignments, because I was a contributing editor. It was like, "Hey, Ed, can you whip up some of these by Thursday?"
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and off we
Yep.
went to the races. But the point is, in the game, baked into the monster manual was, oh, so there are all these races, and it's easy to take care of the Sylvan races because, oh, they're just in those wild forests, and it's easy to take care of the burrowing races, the mean locks, and all the things that come along as we keep going. Oh, because they're in a dungeon or they're underground. But all the ones that live with humans, you just have to assume they live with humans.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I'd written into the realms, rather than saying, this is a dwarf city, this is a human city, because I figured, no, if they're going to trade with each other, then they all live and work together. That's just the way it is. And that's the way the world is.
Yep.
No, very good.
Uh,
Sundered Ant wants to know if you can tell him anything about the beast cults in the North Ward.
So you're talking like Comadland, the Black Tortoise, and the Cult of the Dancing Bear?
I don't know. That's their
Off the top of your head.
Off the
That
top of
was
your
my
head.
hint for Ed to like give
I
us a
know.
little more.
He just stared knowingly into the camera, and that was it.
Well, here's the thing. The beast cults are just that. They're cults. They usually meet in a rented room if they're sufficiently non-controversial, or they meet
Right.
in the private rooms of a cult member. It's like sort of like a dinner club, a private dinner club. You don't say, "Honey, I'm going out for a cult ritual." You say,
Keep the dogs in tonight.
yeah, you say, "Honey, I'm going to be late home tonight. I got another boring trade meeting with Coster, blah, 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 blah." And then you go to so-and-so's house, and that's the way it should be, because that
Right.
allows you to have a mystery surrounding the cult. It allows you to keep things mysterious. It allows your dungeon master to portray the cult and their activities the way they want for their own campaign.
Right.
That's the definition of a cult, is something that is not an established church.
It's in the
If
dark.
you're an established church, they're a church, not a cult. Um, there are there are ways that some people on one side of a religious schism insult people on the other side by saying cultist, something of the sort. But no, in effect, it is something that is underground and small scale. So the which is a very long-winded way of saying there are lots and lots of cults that are
Mhm.
thriving in North Ward, because North Ward is a place where most of the people who live there have enough wealth to not be living hand to mouth the way they are in, say, Dock Ward.
Hmm.
So they've got time to be cultists,
Mhm.
and they also have enough real estate that they could have enough rooms in their house that it isn't 8 people living in one room and going to the toilet in one room. So you don't have to sort of say, could you clear the kids to the side? The cultists are coming through, and they're going to
That's
be
right.
carving up
That's
chickens
right.
for the next
Okay.
5 minutes.
Okay, Ed, but please give us a tiny tidbit about the cult of the Hand of Manchun, please.
Oh, please, come on.
It's finger licking good.
I was trying not
Oh.
Good night, folks.
Thanks for try the veal.
I'm driving down to Ann Arbor just to smack you for that.
Oh dear. And Ryan's
Brian's out.
oh dear.
You are
Mr.
all
Boy.
Okay.
terrible
Sorry.
excuses for human beings.
Did I ruin the cult of the Manchun hand?
Oh,
Boy. Unhand me.
Oh.
just for that, you're getting this gnome.
Oh no.
It's
This
a
is like a
misnomer.
torture chamber.
It's a misnomer.
Oh, nobody knows where you got that.
There's
Yeah.
no taste like gnomes dipped in hollandaise.
Can we have hot sauce?
Oh boy, we strayed far from that one, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. Okay. There was
Meanwhile,
another
back in
question in the
North
chat, but it wasn't related to Northward, so we'll come back. We'll spin back to that.
Okay.
Who had more to share on Northward?
Oh, Ed's got 3 more pages.
How bored do you want to
Okay.
be? No.
Bored.
Okay.
Please,
Okay.
put me to sleep.
Here we go.
I'll have to be right back.
Okay.
I'm going to give you very wise strategic withdrawal. Okay, I'm going to give you a page of architecture. Are you all sitting comfortably? Drinkables to hand? Then I'll begin.
All right.
Many buildings in Northward have been reclad in light limestone and adorned with balconies and exterior hooks and brackets for hanging lamps and plants. Open archways into sheltered porches, so someone opening a front door is sheltered from rain and snow, are a common feature, as are ground floors with lofty ceilings. Streets are clean and watch patrols are frequent. Only Seaward is better served in this civic respect. This is also one of the greenest wards of the city, by which I mean prevalent in green growing things that are tended and were planted deliberately, as opposed to vines and shrubs growing wild on Mount Waterdeep, as in Castle Ward. Window boxes and hanging plants are numerous and thriving, as the ward is sufficiently close to the sea for the damp that plants need, but far enough away to keep the sea salt down, which doesn't do your plants any good. Balcony gardens are abundant, and even rooftop gardens are beginning to appear. Although the northerly expansion of the built-up city has made the air here a trifle less clean and clear than it was in the later 1300s DR, Northward is more free of unpleasant smells and drifting smoke than any other part of the city except the upper flanks of Mount Waterdeep and the heart of the City of the Dead. On Twitter, I recently described the architecture of Troll Skull Manor, an old rundown Northward residence that began as bétante, which in Waterdavian slang means upper wealthy class splendid but not showy or gilded, which is why there's a word for it. And I'll repeat that description here because it's a good baseline for most of the older housing stock in Northward. So Here we go. Troll Skull Manor. North Ward is one of the most prosperous wards of the city, so the ground floor would be mortared fieldstone. There'd be a level concrete floor, stone-lined cellar level below that, not connected to any other buildings. And as Troll Skull is older construction and not of the most expensive, but is a manor, its second floor would also be of fieldstone. Inside these walls rise the support timbers of a box-framed truss, with any floors above the second, including the attic, being half timbered, what in our world is often called Tudor, as in exposed support beams with decorative white stucco between them, overcoated wattle and daub. The roof would be tiled, overlapping hump-shaped rectangular roof tiles that overhang the walls by at least a foot and have downspouts, and the lime ash floors throughout would be covered with flat, glazed tiles. The house would have garderobes, jakes, internal toilets / washrooms, flush by roof cisterns, pole chain, down interior wall pipes into the sewers. It would have internal stairs, and it would have closets between rooms for sound privacy. Bedchambers would be on upper floors, attics would be for cisterns and old furniture storage, and sometimes the rearing of caged pigeons as meat birds for the household, and servants would sleep in the kitchens, pantries. By the way, the pantries are the typical back door location, and entry room for added security. Meaning, if somebody tries to break in through any of the doors in the middle of the night, they're going to land on sleeping servants, rouse the household. There would be heavy wooden doors for interior rooms with exposed stout wooden frames, and the only place where there might not be doors would be a wood-framed square arch connecting the largest ground floor rooms, like a dining room and a main room, what we might call a parlor or a lounge or a living room. A typical manor would have a main stair, perhaps with a landing, wide enough for furniture, and a narrow servants' or back stair that might even be a circular stair to save space. A big manor would have straight run, less steep, and wider stairs. Windows would be blown glass in small diamond frames. Replacements can readily be purchased from the relevant guild or a used goods shop, and most houses have one or more, quote, over windows, end quote, in storage that can be fitted over a broken pane window temporarily until repairs can be made. And these windows would have shutters inside and outside that can both be fastened back or open, and grand houses may have balconies. Sliding wood pocket doors are an innovation for the grandest rooms that likely came along too late for Troll Skull, unless it was remodeled before your player characters come upon it. Fine chain pulley hanging from exposed ceiling beams, oil lamps, or candle lanterns, in either case having hemispherical, frosted, and perhaps tinted glass bowl shades to curb down glare, so there's a shade underneath them between the light source and your eyes when you're standing on the floor of the room, are the norm in main rooms. And that's more about architecture than you need to know.
No, we need to
Most-
know more about architecture. Are you kidding?
Well, it's really handy for artists, it's really handy for dungeon masters, and it's really handy when you're exploring. But if all you want to do is hack and slash, blood can spatter any sort of walls.
And anybody can hack and slash, though. I'm as I when I first started playing D&D, that's all I wanted to do: kill orcs, kill drow, kill monsters, and that was it. And
You antisocial person.
I know, I can't help it. So, but as I got older, the other stuff intrigues me more. I like the backstory. I like the intrigue. I like finding out, hey, where did you get that porcelain figurine over there that I've only seen one other time in so and so's house, and I know that they're rare or something. I like that stuff.
Yeah, me too.
The only thing I might toss in, give us a hint of architecture as to how do you hide the money that you don't want people to know you've got You know?
Do you really want to know all the normal hiding
I-
places? You see, if you're really rich,
well,
and
maybe
you
not.
don't
Maybe
care-
not so normal hiding places.
Okay, the not so normal hiding place is you melt all your gold coins
Hmm.
and you cover the wall in a thin sheet of gold, and then you wallpaper over it or you panel over it. And then you cut off pieces of gold when you need them. That's the unusual. The usual is you have nice, heavy, thick doors and door frames.
Hmm.
And if you're lazy, you just cut a cavity in the wall behind the door frame so that when you take a door off its hinges, you're
Hmm.
opening a thing into a cavity where you have a long wooden box or drawstring bag full of coins. And if you're wanting to be
Hmm.
really cute, you put it in the door, inside the hollow door, but you have the opening on the top of the door so that you have to stand on a stool and then the opening has a little piece of wood that's dovetailed in, so it looks like the door has been made of 3 or 4 pieces of wood dovetailed together. And you just realize, oh, this one here isn't glued in, so I can pull on this tiny thread that looks like a spider web, lift it out, and inside is the cavity, and I just haul on this tiny little string that's nailed to the inside of the door, and up comes this long thing. In our real world, we'd probably use nylons, ladies' nylons, but in the realms, it's like a door snake. Where you sew or knit or crochet a door snake that keeps the cold drafts from under the door in winter. Except this one is full of coins. Now, if you've got
Mhm.
gems, you want to put them in something that will cushion them a bit more. And there are lots of those. And if it's something
Mhm.
that can't be damaged by heat, well, remember I talked about frosted shades for your you put a lot of ready spending money is up in the lamp.
Mhm.
You're going to lower that lamp by hanging pulley. Now, again, that's the money you don't care if the servants know where it is.
Mhm. Yeah. See, this is what we need. More
This
of
is
it.
what we need. More of this stuff.
Okay, well, have all of the stairs, if you're tarting up your house, you put cloth runners on the
Mhm.
stairs to cover the bare wooden stairs that creak and that you have to keep cleaning, washing clean,
Mhm.
and that get scarred if you have hobnail boots or anything, spurs or anything that catches. You mark your stairs. So you put cloth runners up them. And
Mhm.
Waterdeep cloth runners are like cloth runners of the 50s and 60s in North America. They had little metal rods
Mhm.
on each step that went into
Mhm.
screwed holes to hold the runner in. Well, guess what? Underneath the runner, you
There
have a
you go.
flat sheet of coins.
Mhm.
And
Or
you just stick the coins with pitch onto a thin board.
and that the runner, the metal that's holding it in there, you can probably stuff a number of gems inside that too.
If you use thick enough, poles, yeah, definitely. And
Mhm.
by the way, all your window hanging poles,
Uh,
yeah, the
curtain
curtain
rods.
rods, and you pull those finials off the ends. They're hollow and they're full of gems.
Mhm. Okay.
Nice.
There's tons more. One of the things I did for an adventure is I had a room that was just cram full of this stuff, and of course, it was gleeful fun to watch after a player character stumbled on one of the hiding places by accident. The party started tearing apart the room, and they found about 40 more hiding places, which was great fun. And it was especially fun the next time they went to somebody else's house and started tearing apart the room, and the somebody else had no hiding places and nothing to hide. And you're ruining my stuff. This is my home.
Then they have to get out of jail.
Well, they had to pay off.
So
had-
all
Right.
that they found and had to pay.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's
Okay.
excellent. So,
So
Eric, do you
so-
have any more? Or Stephen?
I'm tapped out unless you. Well, I've sketched out the bulk of it. I may write up a little bit more in detail, and I'll pass on to you, and we'll get it out to people somehow,
Okay.
but
All right.
not right now.
Sweet. No, that's fine. That's fine. Eric?
But
Eric, you're muted.
Trying to see what might fit.
It's Waterdeep. It's a big city. Come on, and a lot of
Well,
things.
you said North Ward, so I
Or
was
yeah, I
thinking
know.
the exciting ward, North
The
Ward.
exciting ward. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think part of it is just, if you're actually going to do an adventure in North Ward, it isn't going to necessarily look like your normal adventures, but I think it could be interesting. So, I've been kind of playing with Yartar to the north of Waterdeep, but it's got the sewer system, it's got an old dwarven stronghold in the depths, so it's got some analogs to Waterdeep, and so I've been trying to figure out how to run a good adventure in a city like that, and there's sort of a overlying meta plot with your standard MacGuffins and everything else. But one of the things I've been doing in a city like Waterdeep is trying to, or Yartar, is to try to figure out the stories of the wealthy. Like, why are they there? How did they make their money in the first place? How are they making their money now? And if you can kind of tell that story over several generations for a wealthy merchant, for a clandestine group, whatever you want to pick, oftentimes some point in that story is what I would call sort of a pocket dungeon, like a small little dungeon. And that small little dungeon might be the former, basement of a warehouse. It might be the catacombs beneath a burned noble estate that's been replaced with an inn. It first of all, the building should have some history. It should go through multiple uses. And so if you can figure out that building's history, like what was there before House Gost had its house there, right? That starts to tell you what things might be there. Right. And then if you can leave a little bit of the remnants of a previous location in the current location, all of a sudden you have the recipe for a little mini dungeon that's kind of like carved out of the sewers, or walled off from the rest of the sewers, or walled off from the dwarf hold that's underneath there. And then once you have that, if you know the history of the place, then you can start telling little stories like, well, what would be left down there? So to pick on something from Yartar, but it's the kind of thing you could easily adopt in Waterdeep. In North Ward would be perfect. Is so like if I go back and look at the grand history, 1150 DR, if I remember right, is the year of the scourge. And there's a note in the grand history that basically says worship of Talona and Loviatar soared in this year. And so a lot of times people read over those history entries and their minds kind of glaze over. But what you can do with something like that is you say, well, what would that have meant in Waterdeep, specifically in the North Ward? There probably was at least a couple noble families that jumped on the bandwagon and started worshiping Talona or Loviatar. Okay, so let's take that as a given. Then they probably needed some sort of shrine because there wasn't an allowed temple in town. And so one of them probably put one underneath their noble house, or maybe put one under a warehouse that they owned, where they would all come and meet and worship this season's fad goddess. So you end up with this nice little shrine or temple of one of the dark gods, funded by a wealthy noble patron or two. And then it probably dies out, or it gets rooted out by the city's the city guard, or whatever might happen to it. And now you sort of have this abandoned temple of an evil god. And then you can start trolling through like the monster manuals, the old ones too, right? And you might look back, I don't know, and I don't think it was ever updated from second edition, except maybe by Boz on EN World. And you'd say something like, there was this monster in the undead monster in the second edition called an Inquisitor that was sort of an undead torturer. And you're like, well, that sounds a lot like Loviatar. So maybe the remnants of the last high priest were buried there by the embarrassed nobles who'd moved on to some new faith. Like this week, we're going to worship Lathander, right? And so we'll leave the old guy entombed underneath the streets in the sewers down there where we built our faddish little temple, and now we've moved on. And so maybe there's an inquisitor lurking down there. And so maybe there's also a few treasures of the Lovatayan faith that are still down there.
Right.
But you don't leave an empty temple just sitting there as well. It was a temple of Loviatar, so now it is and forever shall be. Clearly, the next group is going to kind of move in and take it over. Maybe it's some renegade dragon cult cell, and they're like looking for a place to have a little base, and they move in there because they're funded by some new generation of nobles who want their little cult to do something. And so if you think of these places once they're built of having a history, and you kind of work out that history, it may seem like a waste of time, but then once you've worked it out, it tells you what monsters are probably left over, what random treasures are probably left over, and where is this place connected to the surface, and which noble families probably are embarrassed because they remember supporting it at some time and they've worried they've left something down in there that ties them to it. And all of a sudden you have a great little campaign around a mini dungeon in what seems like a boring old Northwood. So anyhow, it's just a thought on how you build something up that kind of goes from nothing to it's just a random entry in the grand history to now you've got a dungeon with multiple occupants, multiple monsters, and it all kind of makes sense even under Waterdeep's Northward. So that would be my thought.
Right. No, that's great actually. I've had that problem when I first started playing D&D was filling in the blanks like that. But that's a wonderful idea. Ed.
Yes. Hi. I have removed the cat from the window screen.
Oh no, the cat was stuck on the window screen.
Well, the cat was trying to get at a beastie because it's dark out here now, and I have 4.5 acres of mainly woods, so all sorts of critters come by, and the cat defends all. By the way she's moaning, it was probably another cat. But anyway.
I think it was one of those cultists.
Yeah. Anyway, so I am back. Yes, I heard everything because I left these on, but so to spare the caterwauling, I turned my mic off.
Speaking of caterwauling, that sounds like a great monster to make.
There was a caterwaul monster.
Was there really?
Yes.
Oh my god!
I don't remember. It's probably first edition, but yeah, there was one.
Mm-hmm.
Really? I did not know that.
So yes, I have lots more Northward.
Please
stuff.
bring it up. Bring it up,
God.
Ed.
Go for it. And then we're going to put Brian on the spot with no prep at all to tell us something about Northward.
That's right. That's right.
Brian's like checking his watch.
It was a dark and stormy night.
Okay, here we go. Northward is one of those places in the city where folk might not know their neighbors except by sight and from a distance, even after years of residency. They tend to mingle in their own groups based on family, friendships, and business relationships, which may or may not include other Northwarders. However, residents of this ward do share a sense of belonging to a community, which in an earlier century was even called Highclear, as in here we're high and clear, meaning higher up from the damp and reek of the sea and from Dockward, in clearer, cleaner air. The name has fallen out of use, but the viewpoint it represents of being above a lot of the squalor, noise, and crowding of much of the rest of the deep remains. Like every part of the deep, however, Northward has its eccentrics, its secrets, and its dark tales. One of these is the tale of the clutching skeleton. A human skeleton animated as a prank by the Northwarder resident wizard of middling level, Alderman Stonecloak, in the 1300s DR. The skeleton would appear out of thin air, teleporting to random locations in Northward, and grab at the nearest living person, seeking to poke and clutch, but not harm. It's thought that Stonecloak created this frightening nuisance as a response to a rival wizard publicly contending that he was, quote, no good at necromancy, end quote. The skeleton was an annoyance that suffered a lot of damage from annoyed persons striking back at it, but he repaired it several times to send it forth again. And then someone else, identity unknown, cast new spells on it to take control of it and make it far more deadly, using it as a night assassin against targets all over Northward who were presumably the someone's foes or who'd crossed or angered the someone. Stonecloak disappeared in the midst of this new career for the skeleton, and many believe that the someone took care of him permanently. The career included several slayings, followed by the skeleton's destruction 3 times. The first 2 shatterings of the skeleton triggered magical explosions that did great harm to the destroyer of the skeleton and the immediate vicinity, but the third one simply ended the skeleton. From time to time since, the same someone, or a copycat, has briefly sent other skeletons to clutch in Northward, but the Lords of Waterdeep passed a specific law imposing heavy fines on involvement in this or any similar pranks, and after 2 individuals, both in other wards, were so heavily fined that one of them lost his city home over it, the clutching skeleton prank lost its attraction. For now.
That's great. Is that
I love
that
it.
picture? Is that picture in the box set of the glowing skeleton floating in front of the tower? Or is
Oh,
that
that's
something you just made up?
no, that's something different. The glowing skeleton, that glowing skeleton is something different.
It
That's-
is okay.
And I see Eric has resurrected the caterwaul.
I have.
You have, thank God.
Just so Jeff actually learned something about D&D.
Thank you. I'm taking notes.
First edition Fiend Folio, only appearance as far as I know.
Ah, yes, I see that. I see Jeff's graphic.
I'm trying to. It doesn't quite fit, but it's standing in front of one of the towers in the.
Yes.
In
No, that's a different thing.
oh,
That's-
is it?
That's
Oh, okay.
different. Oh, yeah.
That's the caterwaul.
Yeah,
That
I
looks
think
so.
that's the
That's
skeleton.
definitely first
that
edition.
Was in, the tower.
Did it again, Stephen? He may have frozen.
He's
Steven
frozen.
has frozen.
Sorry, I casted a spell randomly, and that was my fault. Yeah, this is on the talk. They start talking about the city ward, chapter 3 in the city wards. It's got that picture there. So
Yeah, no, that's something completely different.
okay,
Oh,
okay.
Which
okay.
hopefully Stephen can tell us.
All right, Stephen, you're back. You're back.
Yes, and I'm trying to figure. Well, I can't see the entire image behind Jeff, but chapter 3 of
Yes, chapter 3 of the City of Splendor, and it's where it talks about chapter 3, the city wards, sightseeing in Waterdeep building class, but it's got that tower with that floating skeleton, glowing skeleton in front of it.
Okay, I've got to get you a different file here.
It's page. If
Talk
you have the
amongst
PDF,
yourselves. I'll go digging.
if you have the PDF,
Yes, I
it's
do.
Page,
I'm just trying to find it.
oh, it's page 38.
Okay, but I've closed a bunch of things, so I've got to find where I put it again.
Okay.
All right,
Ain't
while he's
technology
looking,
wonderful.
while he's
That's
looking
right.
that up, we had a question from the
Yep.
the stream, which is, does Waterdeep specifically, because I asked Waterdeep or Undermountain, they specifically want to know about Waterdeep, have any hidden liches in
Ooh.
residence?
Yes,
Yes.
a whole bunch of them.
Can you give us details about any one of them?
No. Well, actually, 3 of them are NDA because they were actually handed in to TSR, so Wizards owns them.
Mm-hmm.
Bastards.
Yes, I know. And I can tell you that one lich is so old that the lich has fallen apart, but is still existing as bits and pieces, as in skeletal hands, withered hands. a hip, a knee and leg, and a skull. Okay, so sort of, but not the flying, floating demi-lich type thing that we
Okay.
know and love.
Was that a Blazing Bones? Maybe was that like on the one that's on the cover of the Runes of Zintel Keep? Steven?
Hmm. Oh, are we talking about this image back in
Yeah.
chapter 3?
Yeah.
That I guess correctly. That is the old skeleton trapped in the field around Agaron's Tower. The
Oh,
difference
is it?
is after Blackstaff Tower, there's now a second skeleton floating in there and a couple of spectral wolves that race through the field, scattering both of the skeletons.
Oh,
Nice.
nice.
And then they reassemble over time. So
All right, so
So
back
there you
to
have
the liches. Well, there's
Yeah,
some
back
more
to
on
the
the
liches.
yes, back to the lich. Sorry.
And there is one lich who has done such a good job with spells that they are hiding out amongst the living. So the next time you're at a noble's revel, and you know how at nobles' revels there's a lot of debauchery and a lot of drinking and a lot of type stuff. And then there are a lot of the bitchy old aunts and grandmothers, and the matriarchs who sit around and gossip and make catty comments about people who aren't there, and talk about their children and how they're doing in life and where they are. Oh well, mine owns 6 ships, in Chasenta. That sort of stuff. Okay, well, there's one who's amongst them who is somebody's um, nasty old noble woman who's actually a lich. But I'm not saying who and where.
Aw.
I'm not a lich. I'm your wife.
Don't go drinking with your buddies and talk about me.
And I'm not going to make any bone jokes, okay?
Oh.
Because yeah.
Old Mother Hubbard. Okay.
What would be interesting to me is to learn about, and I know that this is speculation, right? Is we always think about liches in particular as old wizards who don't think they can learn anything from anyone, right? But for me, the interesting stories are the ones that break those molds. So if we had a lich, for example, who, despite centuries of knowledge, had decided to disguise itself as a young apprentice and learn at Blackstaff Tower, or to spend some time serving the Watchful Order, that there's always this kind of way that we look at beings of particular types, liches being one of them. And I always enjoy those stories and those opportunities to approach things from a different angle, and to
Yes.
say, one might extend one's life for reasons other than the ones that appear in the monster manual, or the reasons other than what makes them good villains, but really makes them interesting people. Because if there's magic that one wants to learn, and it's the continuous drive to learn new magic that causes one to become a lich, whether you're talking about arch liches or Baelnorns or demi liches or liches or whatever. You've extended your life in an unnatural way for a reason, and that reason ought to be compelling if you're actually looking at telling a story and not just creating a monster to roll dice against. So I wonder, have there ever been creatures like that in particular in Waterdeep that we haven't gotten to see, but maybe had stories like those? Steven's
The
raising
short
his
answer-
hand.
Steven's raising his hand.
Well, there's a singular figure that you'll find in the library at the Font of Knowledge, Agma's main temple and cathedral in Waterdeep. and they can't quite figure out, is he a lich, or is it some other magic? He's been coming to the temple for over 14 decades, and he's insistent on reading everything, and that's what he keeps coming in every day to do. And his name is Athkar Semart.
I've heard that name
But
before.
every chance that people have had to try and to track him down and follow him out, despite the fact that he's a doddering, wizened little old man, he always manages to lose people in a crowd somehow, or just turns down an alley and they just lose him. They can't figure out where he lives, but he just shows up every day at dawn, stays for the bulk of the day reading, and then he just vanishes to come back the next day. And they still can't figure out if he's a lich or if he's something else. But the fact is the basic protections of the temples wouldn't allow a lich to be coming in anyway. So that's what fascinates the priests of Agma there.
Really?
So that's at least
So is
one
he
that I
reading
can
something
mention.
new?
What's
So
that?
does he read something new every day, or does he read something new every day, or is he like kind of trapped in a time loop where he can't remember anything?
No, he reads something different whenever he finishes the last thing. He moves on to the.
Cool.
But it's been a long time since he's actually anything specific. Usually, the priests notice when he's finishing up something, and they bring him something else. They have a book somewhere that details what he's read and what he hasn't read. So generally, it's an easy enough task to just keep track of what has come in and has been copied since date X, and they can put that in front of them. So
Interesting. I've heard that name before. I don't know where I've heard it.
And I had lots of good liches and liches that had a like revenants. They had a purpose unfulfilled, and they were going to stick around until they'd done it. But the problem was, I put in archliches in a spelljammer product, and it was immediately okay. So that we won't put those in the realms, because remember there was that drive to make all the brands different. So we couldn't have dragon riders in the realms because that's Dragonlance. We couldn't have heraldry in the realms, or it had to be de-emphasized because that's Greyhawk. You know that, and that was one of the things they said once I put the Archlich in the Spelljammer product. Oh, okay, you got to de-emphasize those in the realms because we got to keep these brands distinct. Always
I think
a mistake,
the only thing that's stuck is that Beholders kind of vanished from all the other places except Spelljammer for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So
So Eric, you have that question for Brian?
Yes, Brian. So what would you like to tell us about the North Ward? Is that generic enough?
Perfect.
So I actually wanted to share. I'm gonna link it in chat for the stream. One of our colleagues, Joseph Carragher, who worked on the Sword Coast Adventures Guide, wrote up a couple of years ago a nice little product called the Cliff Watch Inn, which is in the North Ward.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
that's one that blew up, didn't it?
could be.
Yeah.
It's a lovely little product. It deals in great detail a site in the North Ward that you can use to bring in NPCs and kind of has an operating business there but it also has some really nice connective tissue to the buildings and the people around the inn.
Right.
And the thing I love about the realms, and I've always loved about the realms, is that it it gives you the ability to see not only how can I fit this into my own campaign if I'm not using this for the Forgotten Realms, but how do I develop relationships between characters and places so that this place and these people seem alive to my players. So I really I actually got to edit this product. I enjoyed it a lot. So I've read it several times. It's been out for a couple of years, but I think people should check it out and give it a try. Because if you need a home base for your players, if you've if you've played through either of the Waterdeep adventures and you don't want to go with Troll Skull, or even if you do want to go with Troll Skull as a base of operations, but you need kind of something to populate it with, this is a good model. So
great
I posted the
recommendation.
link in the chat.
Mhm.
It's not my stuff to share. So I'm not just gonna read from it and say this because somebody else wrote it and they want to get paid for it. So let them get paid.
Right.
But I think people will enjoy it.
A great recommendation.
Well,
Thanks, Brian.
thanks.
No, that is great. I like it. I'm looking at it right now. It's in my cart.
Okay.
Anything else on the North Ward, Ed? Or do we tap you out for this evening?
Oh gosh, no, I've got loads more. Shutting me up is always the problem, not.
Nobody ever wants you to shut up, Ed.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, let me give you. North Ward also has its inevitable treasure tales. Tavern embellished stories of this or that cache of lost riches that lie waiting, hidden somewhere in the ward, for a lucky person to find them and become fabulously wealthy, if they can survive to enjoy their windfall. These include the usual pot of coins or gems walled up in a garret, rented by an ailing retired sea captain to decay his or her last days away in, and the successful bedchamber sneak thief who died transfixed by the blades of bodyguards in a noble mansion in Seaward, and so never returned to his North Ward home to lift the right step of his back stairs and uncover the entrance to his secret treasure vault. I decry these tales because they're retold everywhere, details amended to fit the locale, and if they were ever true, may pertain to a place distant indeed from North Ward in Waterdeep. However, there is one treasure tale distinct enough in its details to be clearly of North Ward, and that's the story of the sculptor of Immer Street, a dwarf by the name of Dorlan Spikeshield. Dorlan was white-bearded and bald, never spoke of his clan. Spikeshield was a name he invented on the spot when pressed by a city tax collector, and lived alone and modestly in a ground floor north front shop and cellar. He rented out the floors above to others to live in. His shop was a labyrinth of carved stone statuettes, doorstops, and ornamental bowls. He worked constantly, and it wasn't until after his sudden disappearance from the city in the late summer of 1486 DR that someone dropped and broke one of the statuettes he'd sold them and discovered it had a cavity at its heart crammed full of bloodstones. More than 60 of them. This led to a race on the part of several competing opportunists to buy up and shatter all the Spikeshield stonework they could find.
No way.
The results, not a bowl or doorstop, contained anything but the stone it was made of, but every statue, large or small, hid treasure, almost always gemstones of various sorts, but all of them cut and polished, not raw. And the searchers came too late. After Spikeshield vanished, someone had broken into his shop and removed scores of the statues, though their cumulative weight suggests they weren't taken far. Over 40, however, remained, and the watch came and set up guard on the premises until the watchful order could arrive and spell seal it, which they did. When the civic authorities entered a 10-day later, however, they found unknown parties had entered the shop covertly from below, using existing hidden ways rather than breaking open a new route, and had taken away the remaining statues into the sewers, or rather, a small local section of the sewers for the dredge screens that divide the sewers into small local sections hadn't been disturbed. The cellars and sewage outflows of 60 Northward buildings empty into that particular section, so the statues must have been taken into one or more of them. And there the trail ends, so far. Civic workers report no new appearances of stone rubble in that sewer section or the alleys and streets of Northward, though ground find rubble can be introduced into concrete and hidden that way. Why was Spike Shield hiding gems in the statues that he then sold? And where did the jewels come from in the first place? Where are they now? Wahaha!
Very nice. That's like a great hook for an adventure, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Doesn't
that.
it?
Awesome.
And
love
I can't tell you anything tonight of the interesting non-player character living in Northward called the Mighty Man Spider. That's a nickname, of course. But I can tell you about another NPC, Lady Monster, that I mentioned earlier. But
Oh,
let's
that's
talk
right.
some more before I do that, because hey, it's not late enough. And those of us with small children aren't yet completely whacked out enough.
That's right.
And those of us who are small children, hello, are getting our second win.
That's right. Okay, come on, Eric. Let's go.
All right, I have a question actually. So there's a long stretch of North Ward, which unlike much of the rest of the city, has no wall.
Yes.
And so I've always wondered, how often do people get pushed? And are there any ghost stories clinging to the cliff face? And are there any prohibitions to keep things safe?
Okay. It has no wall because it's right on top of a sheer cliff.
Right, which makes it easy to accidentally jostle somebody over the edge.
Yeah. And you would think that a lot of people would be introduced to death in this way, and you'd be right. But you'd also, that's one of the most heavily watched patrolled areas, as in you're almost never out of sight of a patrol.
Gotcha.
So you can still kill someone, but you're going to immediately suffer arrest and the consequences. You know,
I think Eric's looking for a place he can name it Gnome Drop, and it's just really throw all the
Hey,
gnomes.
it's a sport, okay?
It's a sport, like dwarf tossing. This isn't the Gnome Drop.
I would like to just inform Eric that it's gnomes that came up with the luxury long drop garderobe. And so if they hadn't, the luxury long drop, which is, by the way, that's the one where if you kick when you're sitting on the seat of your commode and you kick your heel back against the wall that holds up your seat, it presses the water bladder that flushes all that long drop. So instead of the smell permeating the garderobe and offending delicate sensibilities, it goes closer to the sewers, and the servants working in the pantries below. So don't knock the gnomes. They're responsible for that luxury long drop.
So what you're saying is if you spend enough money and buy a wealthy enough house, your toilet smells of gnomes.
No, exactly. and we now call garderobes Gnome Drops.
There you go.
Oh dear.
Oh, lordy.
Oh, come on.
No, we have to do an entire show on commons.
Oh, that's right.
And
Spicy.
that does bear
Yeah.
the question though. Would it be reasonable to presume that the watch officers, at least that patrol that area of near the cliff watch, have featherfall magic available to them
The
for their own
watchful order member who's with the patrol does. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
At minimum
yeah.
to protect them, but also to protect people they.
Oh yeah. But it's not just that. It's most patrols because one of the most popular ways to commit suicide, if you've got if you're doing it impulsively as opposed to deciding you're going to get drunk in an area where you would drown. Okay, that's the sort of gentle way. Drink yourself to oblivion in a small open skiff in the harbor, and and hope that you drown, in a storm. Um, that would be to jump off a high place anywhere in the city. So therefore, a lot of watchful order, and the other thing is, it also helps if a worker is falling off a scaffolding and is clinging. You know, you can then cast the featherfall spell and say, "Let go," because
Oh,
you can't
nice.
easily get to the guy any other way, and his arm's going to get tired and he's going to fall anyway. So it gives you time. So a lot of watchful order members who are attached to a patrol. Remember, every patrol has a watchful order person along. Usually they're not high level, but if they're that'll be one of the magics they have. That and shield and stuff like that.
All right, I
Because
have
they're
a.
not.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say they're not just there for window dressing. They're actually expected to be of use. So they bring magic accordingly. Sorry.
So I have a completely random nitpicky question for you, Ed.
Of course.
The kind I usually send you an email.
Uh-huh.
All right. So we're gonna go to Volo's Guide to the North, not to Waterdeep, but we are
Yes.
gonna talk about Northward.
Yes.
And in Volo's Guide to the North, you mentioned North and Seaward once, as far as I can tell. In
Yes.
the discussion of Delgara the Slim Daunt Sword,
Yes.
the monstrously fat proprietor of the Stag at Rest, a tavern in Keldell.
Yes.
She was once a pirate of some infamy on the Sword Coast, captaining a boat called the Witch of Waves. She apparently cut down the favorite son of Barum, a high captain of Luskin. So that's going to be my first question: is what was the name of the favorite son? And then she invested after swimming ashore in Port Last. She invested much of her ill-gotten loot in Waterdeep, Seaward, and Northward. So, what were some of those investments, and how do you end up fighting pirates in Northward?
Okay. First of all, the favorite son's name was Berund. Baerund. Berund.
Okay, perfect.
And his second name was Ildolphin. Ildolphin. Berund Uldolphin.
Okay.
First and second names. Her investments were real estate. She wasn't stupid. She bought buildings, and you buy cheap by buying rundown ones, and you either fix them up or knock them down and build something grander there that is a story or two higher that you can rent out the rooms to people to live in, and then you could live off the rents. Smart people using the modern American tax code do this right now. You spend the money on becoming, in effect, a landlord, and if you do it enough, you get enough rent money that's a salary to live on. And I mean, this is nothing new. Um, People did it in Dickens' London, in England, and various European cities where there's a high enough density and enough people wanting to move into the city to work, and therefore they need some place to live. And quite often you would take over a rundown once grand home and some divided into many small rental living quarters. And she did the same thing in Northward.
Very cool.
Yeah. So, and you see, there's two ways of investing. The riskier way is to invest in businesses. And unless you know your businesses, or it's something that can't miss, like night soil hauling, okay, or um, and the problem is most of the things in Waterdeep are gilded because the obvious thing would be, oh, roof repair, plumbing, carpentry, because there's always going to be a need. Um, but if failing that, your slightly less risky way of is real estate, and that's what she did.
So I've heard you talk about people investing their ill-gotten gains in real estate in Waterdeep before.
Hmm.
So if I'm the DM, how do I turn that little tidbit into an adventure that ends up with my characters intriguing or fighting or whatnot in the back alleys of North Ward?
Oh, there's all sorts of ways of doing it. Um, what if you buy something? Oh yeah, okay, Brian. Yes.
So one of the things I like to consider is when PCs spend their money, who does that money affect, right? And so I've come home. We got 20,000 gold pieces from the Dragon's Hoard, and we are like typical adventures. Within by the end of the 10 day, it's all spent, right? But what did you spend it? What did you spend it on, and who got the money, right? So let's say, for example, in your campaign, there's a number of small business owners who all owe money to this one rich merchant or noble who is pressing them month after month with exorbitant interest rates and um, using it to create their own little fief within the city. If your players have come back and sort of rescued that group from the noble, you've broken their power, right? And so they're gonna want you to stop, despite the fact that they've got the money, right? It wasn't about the money; it was about the influence that they were able to exert over the people around them. Because for some people, you know, I've got hundreds of thousands or even millions of gold. Um, a little bit more isn't the issue. It's not about the money. It's about the fact that it's the casual use of power.
Hmm.
Um, when you disrupt an economy the way that PCs often do, a lot of adventures kind of disregard the effect that that's going to have on everyday people around them. They walk around carrying more money in each of their pockets than most of the people that they see on the street are going to earn in a lifetime, right? They're the NBA stars of of
Yeah.
Waterdeep.
Yeah.
Um, and so when you spend that money, think about how those effects are going. Where does the spider web connect, right? If you go to an armorer and you even if you think about it that small and spend 1,500 gold on a suit of plate mail, right? The reason that plate mail costs so much money in the game is because it takes so long to create, because it's taking away from the knives and the daggers that person would be making every day, right? But if you've suddenly taken business away from a noble who has decided to get his son a beautiful sword for his 20th birthday, that noble is going to be pissed off, right? He can't throw his weight around anymore because you've interrupted the natural order of things in Waterdeep. And so when I think about questions like that, the how do PCs invest their money? It's not just about how do they build their own influence, because what they're doing is they're taking influence away, right? To a certain extent, the powers that be view power and influence as a zero sum game, and so if they're gaining an influence, they must be getting it from somebody else. If you're taking power away, it's my power you're reducing, um, whether directly or indirectly. And so that's how you're going to wind up getting shivved in a back alley, is because eventually you've thrown enough weight around that you've earned the notice of the masked lords and the open lord and people you want on your side, one hopes, but also people who have no interest in helping you and are possibly going to want to stop you before you have the ability, because you have enough personal power to continue gaining that kind of wealth, to disrupt the natural order even more.
I like that. That's great.
Yeah, that's really good. So you didn't really put him on the spot, Eric. You got to be better.
I'll stall more on my question next time.
There you go. There you go.
Ed, were you going to add to that too?
I was going to talk about the fact that everywhere in Waterdeep you can have disputed deeds, or you can have unofficial liens, as in the thing that we know in our world as a lien on a property doesn't exist in Waterdeep and doesn't exist in the realms, but you can have the unofficial same thing. You buy a building that you think you have clear title to, the deeds change hands, and then somebody shows up saying, "Hey, you owe me such and such," and you think, "No, I don't. I've never seen you before in my life." "Yeah, well, the guy who owned that building owed me such and such," and you say, "Yeah, but that's nothing to do with me." Well, if he thinks it does, or he wants to trump it up as if it does, even though it
Right.
doesn't, then you have a problem on your hands. And the other thing is, Northward is a desirable location to buy properties and redevelop them. So, as Brian was just saying, you're cutting somebody else's power. You're not going to be alone in trying to buy choice properties in Northward, and you're always going to be stepping on somebody else's toes. Now, in our real world, if you get into a bidding war for a desirable house, most people don't have the mindset or the resources to get back at somebody who beats them in a housing price bidding war, or somebody who wins the auction and gets the house. Everybody just goes, "Oh, darn. Maybe I'll get the next one," or whatever. That's what most people do. But there are some strong-minded individuals who think, "Okay, you got that house and I wanted it. What happens if you're dead?"
Oh, there you
You
go.
know, and that can happen.
Intrigue.
Or what happens if I don't want to kill you, I just want to financially ruin you? So I'm going to talk to my friends who are wealthy in this guild and that guild, and suddenly anything you want to do in life is going to get expensive and difficult, and you'll never know my hand is the one behind it all
Nice.
until you've been turned out into the street as a pauper, and then I will appear as your creditor and take what you outbid me for. Now you times that by about 40 people, all of whom are, let's use a modern term, dicks. Okay. And who are used to throwing their weight around and getting their own way. Let's just call them tycoons. Okay, of the Monopoly tycoon, the nice little guy with the mustaches and the cigar. Well, he's drawn to be really nice. More of them were probably more like Scrooge McDuck, cantankerous. If you add to that the fact that some of them might have malice or have succeeded in getting rich by holding grudges and just being too much of a pain in the patoot for foes to fight for very long, then there you go. That you put those all together, and Northward, this quiet, clean, nice Northward, suddenly becomes this stew pot in which every step you take is deeper into quicksand.
So along those lines, are there any like Vito Corleone type people in North Ward?
Yeah. There are too many of them for anyone to dominate like that.
Really?
Yeah. There's nobody. Okay. Just to do Godfather for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
That attitude that is expressed in that famous speech. And you come to me.
On the day of my daughter's wedding.
And that factor is, that whole idea of entitlement. It's very hard to do when you're being elbowed by 42 other noble families. You see what I
Okay.
mean?
Yeah.
No one guy can or one gal or one tentacled thing can end up thinking like that.
Now, is it more prominent? Maybe some of the other wards.
Mm, I don't think it's prominent anywhere because everywhere there's competition, one way or the other.
Right. Right.
In Castle Ward, it's all the different envoys and embassies and all the palace courtiers, the
Hmm.
bureaucrats. In Sea Ward, there's even more old money nobles and really wealthy, rising, not yet noble but wannabes. Um, in Trades Ward, they're trade rivals and they're cut and thrusting. Same with South Ward, and then Dock Ward, it's like dog eat dog, and we're all a couple meals removed from going through the next guy's chamber pot to see if there's anything edible in there.
Warden.
Or loose change.
Hey, change has been going to hide it anywhere, right? So, Eric, I know that you're going to have to go soon. So, did you want to say anything else, or?
This has been fun. Can't
Okay.
wait till the next ward.
Absolutely, we'll do it quicker than we did this one, but definitely we'll see you on the 14th, right?
Sounds
For the
good.
game. For the
Yep.
game.
Cool.
Awesome.
Yes.
I can't wait.
Awesome. All right.
See y'all
cool.
later.
All right. Bye, Eric.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so Ed, what's that story you wanted to say? The woman beast, man beast? What was it?
Oh, no. The mighty man spider I can't tell you about.
No,
But
the
let me
other
tell
one,
you
the
about
woman.
Lady Monster. Yeah.
That's it.
Lady Monster is, of course, a nickname. This is a human female of mature years. More specifically, she's the tall, good-looking, perpetually smiling Merthra Dunvelgeld of Tower March being the street, who makes a living breeding and selling monsters and sending hired adventuring bands all over the Sword Coast North to procure living or dead monsters and, quote, monster parts for interested clients. She has a purring voice, long, unruly hair that was once jet black but is graying with age, and claims to be a retired adventurer from Chesenta. The front parlor of her home, South Front Tower March, north of its moot with Immer Street, is full of trophies for sale, from antlered skulls to tentacles in jars and fangs as long as a human forearm. For a single gold dragon, she'll connect you with a likely to meet your needs band of adventurers who live in or have a contact in Waterdeep. Monster procurement prices and the prices she sells monster relics at must be individually negotiated. There are rumors she works with a band of, yes, doppelgangers and has unusual visitors in dark hours, such as drow and mind flayers. One tale even says her bedchamber is guarded by a grell. Several sources say she's very friendly with certain masked lords of Waterdeep and the heads of several noble houses. Did I say very friendly? I meant very friendly.
Oh, that's Ed. How do you spell that name? The woman's name.
Ah, yes. Out comes the dictionary. Okay, so her first name is Maerthra, Merthra, and
Hmm.
her surname, which is a tongue twister, is Dunvelgeld, Dunvelgeld, Dunvelgeld.
Okay, Mertha Dunvilgeld. I put it in the chat. So
So she's not from around here.
she's not from around here. Is it happen to be a little Scottish in there?
No, there are
There's
no
going to be some
Scots
dwarf.
in
There's
the realms except any outlander who's come through, and that includes dwarves. They're not Scottish. They're dwarves.
I'd always blame me dwarves. They just sound like this in Scotland.
If it isn't dwarvish, it's crap. Yeah.
That's crap. That's right. That's
Okay.
great. That's right. Something about it just sounds right to me. I know they really don't belong, but I just can't help it.
Hey, if it works for you around your gaming table, do it.
It does. As a matter of fact, our game that we play with Eric on Saturday nights, there's 3 dwarves in it. I think there's Steven's in it too. And every one of us one of them just screams into the microphone all the time when we're in the game. That's Tom. Tom Costa. You know Tom. You know Tom,
Dear.
Eric. And then Grant Christie, he's more like my character, which talks a lot like this. So you gotta leave it alone a lot. Let's go to here and fight some beasties.
Oh dear. Oh
Yeah.
dear. It's a gathering of the clans.
It is a
Oh.
gathering of the glands, actually. But
Oh dear.
Oh,
dear.
brum, bum, bum, bum.
Yeah.
Lord Macaroni, dwarves are not Scottish.
No.
Hey, wait a second. They do. Hey, Lord, they do have kilts. So
They don't have kilts.
my dwarf does. And he uses it strategically in battle when he lifts it up.
And he killed it with his stick.
That's right.
Because his stick could go around corners. Yeah. And so on and so forth and things of that nature.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
okay. I did write a story once with a dwarf that had no accents. He was actually very well read and well groomed. So
The Walter Cronkite.
hey,
of
that's right.
dwarves.
Thank you for coming to the house tonight. Welcome to my house. That's the way it was in Waterdeep.
Yeah, and my brain just generated Edward R. Darrow, you know.
I'm coming to you from somewhere in Underdark. I'm not allowed to tell you exactly where.
Yeah.
Oh
night.
my God.
And good luck.
Yeah.
That's
for
right. Good
initiative.
nights and good luck.
Roll for initiative.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Ed, I've got a question to launch at you.
Uh-oh.
How much cheaper is it real estate wise in North Ward, where it abuts with the City of the Dead? Is that the cheapest real estate in the ward, or
No, the cheapest is along the cliff.
okay, that makes sense.
No, City of the Dead,
Eh,
that's very quiet. I mean, your neighbors next door don't complain.
That's right.
usually, yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
So
That's right. They don't
if you want to
complain.
do things like run a dance studio, get your minds out of the gutter. If you want to do things that are potentially noisy, this would be a good place to buy
Right.
Okay.
or rent, you know. But yeah, no, that's actually a desirable thing because it means that you can cut sound from one whole area. And the City of the Dead, I know there have been times when the undead have sort of haunted it and it's been dangerous after dark and so on, but it is also a place of fresh air,
Mm-hmm.
as in the breezes that do blow through it do not pick up smokes and smells the way they do blowing over anything else, any other part of the city.
Good
So
point.
it's a that's actually a good place to the cheapest areas now after right along the cliff would be the ones right along the north wall,
Mm-hmm.
because
Okay.
as the city's expanded into that, and you remember in 4th edition, the area that was a caravan marshalling yard and a drill ground for the city guard, between the 2 sets of walls to the north, because they built 2 sets of walls because that was the slow down the next orc horde and provide a killing ground between 2 sets of walls. So, and they expanded that way. The city has since expanded into it, so you now have a crowded neighborhood to the north
Yeah.
of that.
Okay.
That actually raises a question, Ed. For lack of a better term, the stinkier trades,
Mhm.
leatherworking,
Mhm.
tanning,
Yep.
smithing, are those the kinds of things that would be kept away from the walls of the City of the Dead, because that's more of it's meant to be more pristine and
Yes.
so, I mean, to use a modern term, they would want to avoid things like air pollution in that area.
In that area, yes. Because the other thing is, the unofficial use of the City of the Dead, sorry, not unofficial, the informal use of the City of the Dead, it's the only park in the city. And lots of people stroll through it at lunchtime if they get one, or sit down to eat like a picnic, or a sort of a tryst that is not going to go any further than laughing and giggling and getting to know each other. In other words, public lovers, the thing we see in our parks where two people get together and they have a light meal sitting on the grass and they laugh and talk and so on. That sort of stuff goes on in the City of the Dead all the time. And everybody knows it and everybody appreciates it. And I'm talking daylight hours when the gates are open and the watch patrols are patrolling. So they don't want that imperiled because they have their own selfish reasons. I might want to do that. I might want to go for a stroll. And of course, it's also a way, if you want to discuss business and not be overheard, and you're not willing to pay a huge amount of money for a private room or a booth in a club, to make your deal, you can go for a walk in the City of the Dead, 2 or 3 businessmen, and chat over a possibility. Assuming you don't have the time or the money to rent horses and get out of the city and talk way out there because you have to get back to your shop or you have to get back to your business or your family and you just want to go for a walk, you do all that in the City of the Dead. So the City of the Dead has this civic use that nobody wants imperiled. They don't want to smell a tannery and they don't want forge hammers clanging and clanging when they're trying to talk.
And the walls are high enough to hide a lot of that noise.
Well, to direct it upwards, but you
direct
still
it
hear
upwards,
it.
right?
Yeah.
Right. But it's faint. Okay. Yeah, I can see it more like a park when people
Yeah,
go.
it is a park.
Yeah, yeah.
It is the closest thing Waterdeep has to a park because remember, it's a lot harder for you physically and a lot more of a pain in the patoot for the authorities for you to try and climb the spur of Mount Waterdeep that juts out into Castle Ward. Because you have to be fit enough to go up those slopes. And the moment you get off the bit of the slope that is east of the palace, you're going to have watch patrols coming after you. What are you doing? Because as you go higher and higher in Mount Waterdeep, you're getting closer and closer to the Griffin Eyrie and so on. And you're getting closer and closer to Castle Waterdeep. And what are you doing here?
Right, right.
But so you're not going to say, we need to talk. Let's go for a stroll on Mount Waterdeep. It's just not something you do. So the City of the Dead, you do that.
Yeah,
I
and even
think the closest other thing might be those mud flats to the outside of Seaward.
That's right.
But
The mud flats, yes, because that is also a beach, and if you don't mind sand in your boots, yeah, that's a great place to stroll because there's the people who actually go to the water's edge and bathe and so on. And by the way, that's how most people can afford to bathe in Waterdeep. You wash your clothes by walking into the sea and scrubbing. Okay, and you're scrubbing with the sort of hand soap that you make yourself. It won't suds in salt water, but it will wash. And you wear your clothes into the sea and you wash yourself in your clothes. And then there are the kids playing and so on. But if you're neither of them, you're like the 2 men in Child's Christmas in Wales who go marching down to the sea smoking their pipes. And that's what you do as businessmen. You go out the gate, and instead of going towards the water where all the people are, you just parallel along the walls. And you walk along the walls talking, then you turn around and walk back and go back through the gate. So yeah, that's another place you can.
That's like the walk along the river. There's the Seine actually by the Eiffel Tower. You know what I'm talking about, Ed?
Yeah.
It has a big walkway. It's probably 30, 40 foot wide, and the small brick wall that goes right to the water.
That's
right.
right.
right to the River Seine, and you just walk all up and down there. Yeah.
Yeah, and London used to have that too. When they put in the embankment,
Right.
they
right.
added the embankment, which is now a busy street, because they couldn't get around easily enough. And of course, they added it outside the water gates and gardens, which is why if you look at the Tower of London, you will now see this brick wall,
Yep.
and painted on it is entrance to the Trader's Gate, and you can just see this archway. Well, that used to be a water gate, and
Right.
all and all that embankment is now put there. Well, that before the embankment got as it is now with motor cars, and you'd get killed if you tried it.
Mm.
Back when it was coaches and wagons, everybody could also walk along it and push carts, as in dollies, delivering goods. And yeah, you walked along the embankment. Same thing. And many places have that
Right.
if they've managed to retain it. And if you go to, say, York, bits and pieces of the old city walls are still there that you can walk on.
Mhm.
And they are actually places you go for exercise. You take a walk on the walls.
Right. Right.
Mhm. Okay.
Stephen, it looks like
Yeah.
you
I've
posted in
gotta
the
get
chat that
going.
you've got to take off.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. Take care, fellas. We'll see y'all later.
Okay, Stephen. I'll see you tomorrow. I'll see you
All
tomorrow
right.
night, Stephen.
Good
All
night.
right. Good night.
Good night.
Take care,
And it's
Stephen.
good night from Northward.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, we really should start wrapping the stream.
Yes, we should.
Yeah, you want? Yeah, you need to go take care of.
Yeah. So
take care of business.
let's do a couple of technical things while we're
Sure.
here. Folks, if you're not already following, I don't know how you got here. But if you're not already following the channel, on the bottom, let's make sure over here ish. There should be a heart to follow
Yes.
the channel. You want to make sure that you push that button. That way you can get notified when we go live in the future. Jeff, what is the Twitter for the podcast?
Twitter. I don't. Well, no. Twitter. You mean the Twitch?
No, the Twitter.
No.
We just told them how to do the Twitch.
The Twitch. The Twitter. I actually don't have one set up for the page. I need to do that. So.
All right.
I know.
So
we are Twitterless in the night.
I will set a Twitter up for the page, and that'll be a place we'll be able to announce the stream when we're gonna have our events and things. So
if everybody just gives me a moment, I will link to the Facebook page.
Oh yeah.
In the chat.
You're quicker at it than I am.
Can see.
We're all
Brian knows this stuff.
That's right.
Brian is up on the tech.
That's right.
And the modern world. Whereas I am happy we have the electric light in this house.
That's right. I've got a garter warb inside me house.
Yeah. So folks, if you aren't already if you haven't already liked or followed, I don't know what the term is now for pages on Facebook. The page is now in the chat. Just click on that if you've got a Facebook account, like or follow or subscribe or whatever the term is this week.
And let me do the YouTube, and let me put up the YouTube channel also. Give me just a second.
Yeah.
I'll pull that up. You keep talking.
Yeah. If you're not already following Ed on Twitter, he is at the Edverse.
Yes, follow me. And you'll be treated to lots of Realms lore answers, and you can ask your own questions because it never ends.
Yes.
That's right.
I am pushing Jeff to get a more solid calendar for these streams.
Yes.
So the hope is that in the future, they'll be planned a little bit better, and we'll have the ability to get questions ahead of time and kind of give folks an idea of what the plan is for the stream before you get here. So you know what to expect.
Yes.
And
I'm still learning all this stuff, and I'm not that great at it yet. And unfortunately, my day job has me working 10 to 7. So
yeah,
sometimes it's
I know that
feasibly I may have to have Brian help out.
But we do need to get everything Brian is saying. Yes, we do need to do all this stuff.
Yes. Well, we do have. Don't forget the 14th of August. We do have our gaming with Ed Greenwood. The 3 people who won a chance to actually play in a game with Ed. We're gonna have here on the 14th. I believe it's gonna start at 9. Ed, do you remember?
Let me just check here. It says Does it say? It doesn't say.
I have it in my calendar.
10 a.m.
10 a.m. Okay, well, we'll be on earlier,
Yeah.
but no, yeah, we'll start at 10.
And-
We're gonna live stream that.
And Brian will be interested to know that there's yet another noble family of Cormyr going to be introduced in this.
Oh,
This will be the
that's right.
well, let me just give the title of
Yeah.
this adventure: The Doom of the Last Lions. And
Okay.
Last Lion is LASTLYON, Last Lion. So the House of Last Lion, the Doom of the Last Lions. Wahahaha.
So it bodes well for them.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
gonna go well. It's gonna
not
go real well.
It's not gonna go well.
But I want to thank everybody for coming.
Yes, thank you.
If for some odd reason you want to follow me on Twitter, my handle is the same as my handle here in chat, which is at Brian Cortillo. I talk about D&D stuff. I talk about inclusion stuff. I don't tweet a lot, but sometimes when I do tweet, I tweet a lot. So I'll be silent for days, and then there'll be a tweet storm of 20 or so tweets.
And he is the world's leading expert on Cormyr, the
That's
Forest
right.
Kingdom.
If you ask a question, I will try and answer it, but I don't expect you to ask many questions. Yeah, Jeff, if folks, do you have a Twitter you want to share with
I
folks?
do.
Or...
It's just at JE Thetford. Just at JE Thetford, THETFORD. And I do post the show in there as well. Got a lot of people hooked up in there who we've dealt with. Brian Minge, Jennifer Kretschmer, Sarah, Jordan, and her husband. So we do a lot of stuff there. But yeah, that's. But I'll post it there, and then when I get the Twitter set up for the show, I'll have that. I'll announce that there, and as well on the fans of Ed Greenwood on Facebook.
Yeah. If you have any suggestions for future streams, I'd recommend going to the Facebook page. That's the best way to communicate with the group.
Yes.
And if that's not it, I think that's gonna be.
Yeah, that's it. And I
for
put the
tonight.
YouTube there. That's got our past shows. You can see our evolution from when we first started doing this, which is very choppy, but till we got a little bit better at it, and then we started moving over to Twitch. So there's probably, I don't know, 50 or so. You think 50 or so shows or so on there? About 2 years worth of shows. Brian's got a couple of shows on there. We interviewed him, and Matt Forbeck, Ed, of course, Eric, George Crashos,
Jeff Grubb?
Jeff Grubb, that's right. The notorious Jeff Grubb, unsinkable Jeff Grubb, I called him.
Oh dear.
Oh dear, the unsinkable Jeff Grubb. So yeah, thank you everybody for coming, and we'll definitely let you know when it's coming again. Anything, Ed?
No, just to say thanks to everybody. This is always fun hanging out in the realms.
Absolutely.
And
So
yes.
you want to hammer down another ward before, so it'll make me commit to it?
No. I want the people calling in or writing in to clamor for which one they want next.
Oh, there you go. So we've done Dock Ward, and now we've done North Ward. So go for it, people. Let us know what you want us to go over next. I mean, there's a
I
few
will
choices.
say that I have a long to still be working on Volo's Guide to a particular ward of the city. It's just
that
going
would
to
be
take
nice.
forever to do it because I've started in on it, and boy, is it a lot of work.
So let me ask you a question. I have to ask you this because I said this when I first saw Volo's Guide. Is there a reason why Volo looks incredibly like Eric Boyd?
Okay. No, originally, the look and feel of Volo was established by Clyde Caldwell, the TSR artist, and in fact, Volo's Guide to Waterdeep, is a self-portrait of him.
Is it really?
Yeah. And they have sort of cartooned him over the years. You know, he's gotten the round spectacles and
right.
the cap and the so on. And you know, Volo's been through a lot. But yeah, he does look a bit like Eric, but I would caution you. People say things like, "Oh, Elminster looks like Ed because he's Ed's self-insert." I would
Mm,
remind them I was 5 years old when I
right.
created Elminster and did not have a beard at all. None of my hair was white. I had a buzz cut and thick plastic glasses, and looked like your typical 5-year-old kid. So yeah, these things, these resemblances, are mere coincidence, unless you're talking about a doppelganger.
Right, right. And you're a doppelganger. Um,
Well, I'll remind everyone that for the entirety of third edition, every character who was bald was supposedly Sean Reynolds, and
Yeah.
every character
Yes,
Chris
and every
yes.
Perkins
character
too.
who had a beard was supposedly Monty Cook.
That's
Um,
right.
of course, neither was true, but this was the people always believe that there are self inserts and that the art orders are coming in to specifically mimic designers, which of course
No.
is almost always not true.
Right.
It is occasionally true. There are, I mean, there's one, I can't remember which piece it was. It was the carnival piece in the late 90s that they actually did uh uh pose. They modeled for they
Yeah.
modeled the designers. And was it Jim Ward that they used on a number of covers?
Um, there are a bunch of Sean Reynolds was actually the model for some of the artists to do various characters, but not necessarily in the realms. They were just, you know,
Hmm. Well,
Right.
that
um,
was when when the artists were in house.
yes,
Right.
yeah,
And a lot of them just use other people they knew because
yeah,
you could see that like for example Dritz, his incarnation from the first book all the way through the covers is not the same person. And you could
no,
see each time it was a different artist and there and some of them you could say they never read the book or knew what he looked like. So unfortunately it is left up to the artist quite a bit, I believe.
yeah. We should if we're going to invoke the living and dead, we should actually do it when Stephen can set us straight on
Mhm.
the artists in house of his time.
Oh, that's right.
You know,
I think that's only fair.
yeah.
That's only
But
fair.
we've
Yeah.
somehow derailed ourselves even for the sign off.
Yes, I know. I know. We can't even
So
sign off correctly.
yeah, so we're gonna wish everybody a great night. Thank you all for
Yes.
coming. Make sure again that that you've liked the channel. That way you get a notification next time we go live, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Hey everyone, this is Curry Russell, co-host and producer for the Mages and Sages podcast, along with my comrade Jeff Thetford. Now, if you are a fan of Ed Greenwood or are just an avid reader of the Forgotten Realms, then this is the show you've been looking for. Come join us with guests such as author Eric Boyd and count how many times he can hurl the word impulture and George Crashos in the same running insult that is as old as our waiting for George to finally give it up. Listen to Ed dazzle you with the almighty NDA hammer as he pitches to other authors like Stephen Shind, just to have him make up lore in an instant because Ed legally just can't say. Hear stories of characters you've long read about and wondered what happened to them next and just never found out with all the droning ums and uhs and overuse of the word fantastic you can possibly stand. Oh, and sometimes we create new lore in the form of voice acted stories never told, the creation of new and wondrous items and spells. We hope you'll join us, and just maybe you can be a part of our show as well.